What would happen if you woke up as a minor villain in your favorite dark fantasy novel? That's exactly what happened to Han, who has no magic, no social skills, and a future that looks like a disaster waiting to happen. His only chance of survival is to take a skill that no one seems to take seriously. All he wants is to get out of the academy unharmed. But can he really change his fate, or is his trouble just around the corner? Let's find out. Reincarnation is a gamble. You could end up as a cockroach crawling on the floor, but being born as a human is like hitting the jackpot. And our protagonist just won. After working himself to death in his past life, he finally has a new start as a human again. He finds himself in the body of Anza, a minor villain who dies in the first chapter of a dark novel he used to enjoy. Seeing the stats of this hopeless fool, our hero feels trapped in this doomed role and curses the wheel of fortune for such a terrible choice. Furthermore, his current situation is an auxiliary facility for dark mages, which makes his reincarnation worse. Our hero remembers that before, he was once full of potential due to his natural magical abilities, but he was excluded from the Ardell Academy for his lack of practical skills. Now he finds himself surrounded by mysterious people who mention that he is a student from the Ardell Academy and wonder if he might be useful. Our hero remembers that this was the unfortunate moment when Anza became interested in dark mages and approached them. Just as he thought, one of the mages finds him useful and tells him to follow. As they walked, the mage asks him if he knows how to join, to which he replies yes. Inside, he's panicking, since killing a member and signing the dark magic oath means there's no turning back. To make matters worse, he knows that the Dark Mage organization, including Anza, will be wiped out by the novel's main protagonist. He starts thinking about his escape plan while stressed out, when suddenly, a system notice appears, warning him to get out immediately. Surprised by the unexpected outburst, he freezes. A loud scream echoes through the facility, and the mages around him react, trying to figure out what's happening in the basement. But they give him a stern warning to stay put if he wants to live. As soon as they leave, he takes the opportunity and runs. Runs without a clue where to go. Completely exhausted, he stops and complains about being lost. Ahead, he notices a locked door and a soft light approaching as he stops. A deep voice from a dark mage startles him. He ducks down and hears two guys talking about a kid who escaped from the third basement. Once they're gone, our hero checks his surroundings and tries to open the locked door. It doesn't budge at all, no matter what he does. Frustrated, he remembers Anza's magical abilities. He concentrates and tries to channel his magic into his fingertips to break the lock. It doesn't work and leaves him exhausted and hopeless. Just when he thinks things can't get any worse, he hears something approaching. He turns and prepares for the worst, but sees a small dragon. The dragon grabs his robe, wanting to be picked up. Our boy picks it up and tells the dragon straight up that he can't take care of it. The little one cries like a baby, which is impossible to ignore, so he gives in and takes it with him. He runs while muttering. He thinks the dragon is doing it on purpose and knows he's not cut out for this, so he stops and decides to test the dragon's power. While he watches it, his system activates and unlocks his taming skill, asking him if he wants to tame the little dragon. And displaying its abilities, it turns out the dragon has a flamethrower skill. Seeing that, he remembers some traits from his past life. But he gets annoyed because there's no accept button on the system. He realizes he'll have to tame the dragon just like Anza did in the novel. As he starts getting the hang of it, he realizes he has decent experience and skill in the art of taming. Using hand gestures, he builds trust and reassures the little dragon, telling it to trust him. Although he's worried if he's doing it right, the dragon calms down and floats in the air. When the dragon lands, our hero doubts if he's really in control, but decides to put it to the test. He tells the dragon to break the lock on the door. The dragon charges forward without hesitation, jumps and bites the lock, breaking it like it's nothing. He's completely shocked, as it was so easy. With the lock broken, they are ready to escape. He hears footsteps approaching and feels a bad vibe. When he looks back, the men see him just as he's about to escape. Trapped and unsure what to do, he remembers a basic fog spell from the Ardell Academy designed for concealment. But our boy has never tried it before. With no other options, he takes a deep breath. He concentrates and imagines holding a weapon while channeling energy into his fingertips, hoping the spell fills the cave with smoke. Fortunately, it works and creates a small light on his fingers. The mages freeze for a moment as he quickly casts the spell, causing a cloud of smoke to surround him. He then takes the opportunity to run for the door. But just as he's about to open it, a ghostly hand suddenly appears and grabs him by the neck. He's completely shocked and can't breathe as it chokes him and he falls to the ground. His pet rushes to him as he wonders if this is the end. The mage smirks disdainfully and says Han can't escape and should be grateful for a painless death. As he lies there, feeling defeated, he realizes how unfair it is to have been brought back just to face death again. Just when all hope seems lost. He remembers one last trick. His pet clings to his robe, sensing his anxiety, and he tells the dragon that it must trust him if it wants to escape. He apologizes for his mistakes and asks for its help. The reptile spreads its wings and approaches the sorcerer with a bold stance, unleashing a huge blast of flames. The fire engulfs the man, who screams in agony. The ghostly hand that was choking him vanishes, finally setting him free. Once the danger is over, the dragon returns to the boy. He wasn't expecting this outcome, but he's grateful to have such a reliable partner. Our boy tells the dragon he owes it his life and promises to take care of it. But first, they need to escape. They walk through a scorching desert, looking for a cave to rest. Relieved to be free from the dark mages, our boy feels the heat and thirst wearing him down. Even the dragon seems exhausted. As he vows not to let the mages catch him again, he spots a cart and approaches the old driver. Asking for a ride, the driver asks if he can pay. Without hesitating, our boy pulls a gold card from his pocket and asks him if it's enough. The old man is surprised to see the card and recognizes it as one from Ardell Academy with special benefits. After thinking for a moment, he agrees to let him on. They thank him and get comfortable in the cart. As they get comfortable, the old man asks them where they're going. Our boy hesitates and realizes he ran off without a plan, with the dark mages probably after him. He decides his best option is Ardell Academy. It's a place where people might still want him dead, but it's perfect for laying low. Just like in the novel he read, our boy's adventure begins at Ardell Academy, where we meet Celine, who is a second-year assistant professor. She admires the marble floors and elegant chandeliers, and finds the student uniforms very stylish. Her smile disappears when she sees our hero arrive, covered in dust and looking exhausted. Celine can't believe someone so messy has entered the pristine academy. She rolls her eyes and wonders how he managed to get in, while he remains oblivious to her annoyance. Celine is worried that this kid has trouble controlling his natural magical abilities. He might ruin the Academy's reputation on his first day of the semester. Meanwhile, Han keeps his dragon hidden in his robe, but the little guy is restless and really wants to get out. Our boy figures she must be a professor, so he asks her if he's late. She tells him yes, but decides to ignore him as she remembers the rumors about Hanch's strange obsession with black magic with life-size dolls and thinks he's just trouble. So she simply tells our hero to hurry up and get inside. He thanks her and goes in, while she reflects on how her perspective has changed as a second-year professor. Once inside the classroom, his classmates start whispering and gossiping about him, saying he's weird since he arrived in a cart and looks poor. Our boy ignores all the noise around him, thinking he's probably on his way to becoming that crazy villain everyone talks about. Sitting in the back, he overhears snippets of his classmates, speculating that he must have gotten a boost because a professor gave him special treatment. He can't help but wonder if his family paid someone for his advancement, if a professor really sees something in him, or if some magic tower wrote him a glowing recommendation. His main focus is to stay alive in this dark fantasy world, using his skills to survive. He sets 2 goals, starting with finding a quiet place to hide. As a low-level villain known for being violent and inept, he risks a terrible fate, like being buried alive by the hero. With the academy closed for the year, he has time to think. He doesn't know why he died, but it might be related to unresolved issues or unknown crimes. He'd rather try and fail than face that dark future. His backup plan is to graduate and secure his future. His wealthy family cut ties with him due to his past, so finishing at the academy is his best shot at a stable life. He decides to lay low, avoiding the protagonist and staying out of trouble. When the professor walks in, our boy recognizes him as Professor Green from the magic department. The professor praises the second-year students for their work, highlighting how the top student raises the bar and makes things complicated for him. With students between 14 and 19 years old, the academy is very competitive and only 10% graduate with honors. This makes our boy wonder how he can compete with the protagonist's insane power in the black magic group. Since he just wants to live a quiet life, it seems almost impossible. The professor suddenly says that any student who doesn't meet the standards won't be able to join his class. Han is surprised when the professor gives him a serious look, almost as if he were in a spotlight. The professor shares the exam schedule and taps his staff, summoning an announcement illusion. Our boy is amazed by the spell's advanced magic. The screen explains that after a year, he'll be able to choose 3 subjects for written and practical exams. He's impressed by the academy's magic and likes having a choice, but he suspects it won't be as simple as it seems. The professor explains that only some students will be able to choose their subjects, and it will be done in order. He even offers to hold a drawing to decide the order. Our boy thinks it's unfair to leave his exam's fate to chance, with no choice but to act fast to save his grades. He feels like his luck ran out after dealing with those dark mages. The professor pulls out a ball and says that Han will be the first to choose. Our hero is surprised. Feeling that maybe his luck isn't completely gone after all, he starts to review the subjects and quickly realizes he must avoid anything too practical or related to necromancy. As he scans the options, everything seems difficult and he's really struggling to make a decision, but then he sees one that stands out: exploration of arithmetic and magic formulas. At first it sounds very complicated, but he thinks it's probably the easiest option he has. Besides, he knows he's decent at memorizing, so he thinks he'll be able to handle it somehow. His friends talk about his subject choice and say that arithmetic is the easiest option. They feel relieved that he chose it, since they are struggling. While they're chatting, he quickly selects his other 2 subjects. One of them seems manageable. He studies quietly in the library, remembering his time as a veterinary intern. The subjects he chose remind him a lot of his veterinary science major. He starts with exploration of arithmetic and magic formulas and realizes that the math here is completely different, as his old formulas might not be enough. After finishing with that, he grabs another book to keep working. He's so focused on studying that he completely forgets about his pet in his backpack. Other students start to get suspicious when his dragon tries to get out. He quickly pushes it back down to avoid being noticed. His little friend wants to come out and play, but he keeps it hidden to avoid trouble. Taking it out might help, but it would only create more problems with the crowd around them. He decides to leave the library. Our hero knows that dealing with magic and taming a baby dragon would attract too much attention. After leaving the library, he heads to the academy's underground training area. He tells his dragon it can run free, thinking it's the perfect opportunity to test his taming skills, since he has understood the theory. As he asks a staff member at the training field for a ticket to get access to the beginner zone, she is surprised to see his dragon and comments on his decision to bring a dragon to the newbie area. When she asks for its name, he realizes he hasn't named his pet yet. He asks the dragon for its name, and it excitedly responds Chime. He keeps thinking of a name, but the dragon gets annoyed because he doesn't understand. He suggests names like Drake and Charizard, thinking they're the coolest names, but the dragon gets angry and implies it will get him if he doesn't choose a good one. Seeing its reaction, he carefully chooses a unique and fitting name: Basilisk. Our hero notices the dragon perks up when it hears the name Basilisk. The girl notices and tells him that the training area can accommodate 2 people, but there's already someone in the other room. She then takes them to the armory and explains that it's a rental service for students like them. Our hero thinks the weapons look pretty bad, probably because they're free, but he decides not to complain, since he wants to get stronger and should be grateful for what he gets. He picks a shield and a wand. The girl leads them to the beginner's practice area and opens the door. Our hero feels a mix of emotions upon entering, as the place looks like a peaceful garden, leaving him a bit amazed as he explores. He spots a slime and thinks about how even the low-level monsters seem to be good-hearted here. Although he doesn't feel the same way, he asks Basil if it can see the slimes, and when his pet says yes, he decides to make them fly. Basil is surprised by its master's cold command, but knows it has no choice, so it proceeds to defeat the block slimes while its master watches. As Basil starts to enjoy it, his master realizes that the dragon's instincts are beginning to manifest. He mutters to himself about how the little scared dragon has disappeared as Basil destroys them all. He decides to improve his skills while he continues to wander around. When he hears some strange noises and is suddenly attacked, he turns around and manages to defend himself just in time. The block slime monsters have returned for revenge, and he realizes he can't face them all with his current strength. But with a plan involving Basil in mind, he's sure they can take them out one by one. Our boy asks Basil if it's ready and suggests trying their classic move. Basil jumps and launches a flaming attack, quickly eliminating the monsters. Impressed by Basil's power, the boy says they need to keep training to improve. After hours of training, they lie on the ground completely exhausted. The boy mentions that the process of taming Basil and casting spells has left him drained. Seeing Basil focused on him, he promises to get it a tasty treat when they get back to the dorm. While Basil sleeps peacefully nearby, the boy notices something happening below and goes to investigate. He sees the student she mentioned earlier training with her beast. The beast is behaving clumsily, while the girl gets frustrated seeing that it's ignoring her commands. As he watches, the girl tries to make her hellhound behave. He thinks she's handling the situation completely wrong and tells her that she shouldn't try to control it that way. She yells at the beast to come back and sit, but it completely ignores her and walks away. She storms off angrily to find her stubborn animal, commenting that it's going to regret being captured. As she looks, she notices her wild beast has calmed down and is now sitting quietly next to our hero. She's curious about how he managed to tame her pet so easily. When she sees him, he asks if that wild creature is hers and says he's been watching her struggle for a while. He suggests that her way of taming the beast isn't the right one. She looks a bit lost and discouraged. Our hero explains that getting too emotional only makes the beast more restless. She is surprised and can't believe that Han is actually giving her advice. As she thinks about what he just said, she can't help but remember that Ardell Academy is the best school in the entire empire. Ardell is an earth mage and has always been one of the top 3 students there, even though she comes from a commoner family and has had to face many challenges. Her skills are practically exceptional. It turns out Ardell ended up choosing the subject she struggles with the most for her lottery-drawn exams, Introduction to Basic Taming. She calls it bad luck, but deep down she knows she's not good at taming, which is why she's putting effort into practicing. What really baffles her is Han. Last year he couldn't even tame a slime and she saw him fail right in front of her. People say he's deep into black magic and she finds him somewhat moody and lost, but now, somehow, he has managed to get her wild hellhound to calm down and even become affectionate with him. She can't believe it and asks Han how he did it. He just says that the beast is calm now and that it's hers again. She takes it and thanks him. Our boy asks her why she chose a hellhound, since it's a difficult choice for a beginner tamer. She proudly replies that taking on a complicated monster like that means a lot to her, especially since it's her first try. She wants to prove what she can do. Understanding her point, our boy jokes that he thought she would prefer something a bit easier, like a pet that enjoys mud baths or something more laid back. Annoyed by his jokes, she reminds him of his past failures. As she tends to her beast, Ardell can't help but think about Han. As he talks to her so easily, even though she's just a commoner and he's a noble, her gaze drifts to the small dragon next to him. It's impressive that he has already managed to tame it, especially as a second-year student. Han seems to have really changed. They head to the place where the block slimes are, and Ardell double-checks to make sure it's the right spot Han suggested so she could practice and bond with her beast. After he gives her the okay, she dives into the task and starts clearing vines and grass to get to the slimes. Han tells her that he almost defeated them before, but they keep reappearing. Ardell tells him not to worry, that she'll take care of them. She asks for a moment to prepare to face the slimes. The slimes attack as soon as they see her, but Ardell eliminates them all with a single blow, leaving a huge mark behind. Han is impressed, but he can't help but make a joke, saying her technique looks like she's burying the slimes alive. Ardell gets annoyed, but pretends to ignore him. As one slime is still lingering, it suddenly moves to attack her, and to her surprise, Han casts a spell on the slime out of nowhere. She's in shock because she perfectly remembers that he couldn't use magic at all. Han, casually, he asks if she didn't notice the slime coming back to attack her. Still a bit stunned, she pretends she was completely aware of the situation. As he starts to walk away, he comments that it's a relief she knows what's going on. But as he walks away, Ardell realizes something. She didn't actually feel the slime approaching from behind. Besides, she can see that Han's spell and his magic arrow are much more precise than she expected from someone who is just starting out. Our boy starts to say something, but is interrupted when an unexpected error occurs in the dungeon, triggering an alarm that blares throughout the place. They both jump into action, and he quickly asks if she knows what could have caused it. But she's just as confused. Meanwhile, a man in the director's office tells the honorary director that there's a situation in the training dungeon. The director asks what's happening inside and which students are in there. The man informs him about Han and Ardell. The director sighs and mentions that Han is nothing but trouble. He hints that losing Han wouldn't be a big deal. But when it comes to Ardell, it's a completely different story. She has talent and a bright future ahead of her, so her safety really matters. He points out that Han has no skills and will probably struggle in such a dangerous dungeon. If there's a problem with the dungeon's magic system, the monsters could be much bigger and stronger than usual. He's worried that Han really doesn't stand a chance and suggests the staff prepare for what might happen. Back in the dungeon, Han and Ardell are defending themselves well for now and have managed to defeat several slime monsters. But they just keep coming, and it seems like they're never going to stop. Ardell grunts that the monsters are getting weirder and that this whole place feels like a real hell. Frustrated, she yells that the slimes won't stop spawning and vows she'll never look at a slime again. While she's so worked up, Han can't help but find it somewhat funny. Watching her, he notices that even though Ardell seems completely exhausted by the endless waves of monsters, she still seems to be handling it surprisingly well. He thinks that even though her taming skills aren't the best, her swordsmanship is just as good as a pro's. It makes him wonder if she might be the Earth Mage destined to become a great sorceress. Still, he finds it pretty strange to see someone as strong as her in a beginner's training area like this. Earth Mages being called swordswomen is no big deal. Han is really impressed by the girl's personality. She has a bit of a temper, but he doesn't mind it at all. While he's lost in thought, Ardell catches him slacking off and handling the monsters all by herself. She thinks it's a bit weird and wants to know why he's just nodding along instead of jumping in to help. Han can't believe they've been stuck in there for over 3 hours without a single word from the outside. He wonders if anyone even knows they're in trouble, which might explain why no one has come to help them. She replies, that's just how it is, since only about 30 minutes have actually passed outside. So time moves slower in there. She sees the whole mess as a chance for them to get more training, trying to understand why there hasn't been a response yet. He says that even if they know what's happening and come to rescue them, they still have to hold out for several hours. They need to endure and keep fighting the slime monsters until help arrives, which seems pretty hopeless. When she hears Han's words, she gets angry and snaps back at him, accusing him of saying such negative things as if they were just waiting to die. Han replies sarcastically, saying he would never say something like that, clearly enjoying the exchange, and tells her to buy him some time. She's confused and asks him what he's planning, but Han just tells her she'll find out when the time comes. He reminds her to keep the slime monsters at bay, because he doesn't need much time to do what he has to do. She gets a little scared and asks why she has to handle it alone and what he plans to do while she takes care of the slimes. But Han just brushes her off and dives into his plan. Basil is a bit anxious about Ardell, but Han reassures him, assuring him that he has everything under control. As he walks, he spots some glowing vines lighting up the area and mentions that he's read about them in the story and knows how to handle them from the original novel. The error dungeon really tests Han's skills compared to Hansia. Han really struggled with this part of the dungeon before when dealing with those annoying vines, but now he's excited to find them and tells Basil to gather more. Basil looks around and then shoots off to find the rest while he waits. Han complains about how readers always criticize him for using this tactic and call him a loser and a bad guy. While holding a single vine, he mutters to himself that he doesn't deserve so much hate. Ardell is holding her own well against the slime, but she's starting to run out of mana. She worries because Han is taking so long and can't help but curse him a little in frustration. Just then, Han bursts in, shouting that he's done. Ardell turns around and looks a bit bewildered when she sees him with those mysterious vines, as if he's built some kind of barricade. She signals for him to get inside quickly, suggesting they keep things on the down low since the slimes are coming back fast. But Han insists that she get in immediately. He shares his idea of building a wall to stop them and eliminate the monsters outside with some amplification and fire magic. He believes he can stop the slimes from healing and make them disappear. He casts a spell and creates a large green arrow using arrow magic, then mentions that the only thing left to do is to light the arrows on fire, turning to Basil. He tells him it's his turn now. Basil's eyes light up again as he sets the arrows on fire. Han then shoots the flaming arrows out of their barricade. The slime monsters notice the glowing arrows and suddenly self-destruct in a huge explosion. Ardell watches in amazement as Han shows off his creation, struggling to process the fact that this is really the Han she knows. The slimes are disappearing and not coming back, so she asks him how he did it. Han explains that when he buried the slimes and scattered their remains, their poison would explode if fire magic touched it. She then wonders if he has a plan to stop the rain of fire from getting through their barricade. Han nods and says she has a good point, but the vines of the barricade are special, since they can resist fire and won't burn. With everything burning around them, all they have to do now is wait for their rescue. As things seem to be calming down a bit, Han feels a bit of relief. Ardell can't help but think how unlikely it is that someone like him would actually save her. The nobles at Ardell Academy usually ignore commoners, so she starts to wonder if Han has some hidden agenda. Meanwhile, Han is also puzzled by the way she's looking at him. He thinks she should be thanking him for saving her. Ardell might seem grumpy, but she has a good heart and manages to say she's somewhat grateful since he did kind of save her life. Han smiles and says, "That's great," then asks if she could do him a favor. Ardell looks a little worried, trying to guess what the favor might be. She thinks she'll do it if it's something simple, but she's not interested if it's something weird. Before she can finish her thought, Han asks her to keep everything a secret, from taming the beast to capturing the bug slime and building the barricade. Ardell finds out her guess was right, but she still feels like something is off. She can't shake the feeling that Han is hiding something and thinks he seems a bit suspicious as she watches him pick up some slime orbs. The whole part about clearing the dungeon was pretty much glossed over. The two professors were clearly baffled by the sudden bugs, but they decided to reward the students for handling things without anyone getting seriously hurt. Later, Han was called to the dean's office to receive a big reward. Sitting there, he looked relieved and mentioned that he understood the value of rewards, but they weren't really his thing. He was much more focused on getting stronger himself and helping his cute beast level up. With the dean gone, Han and Basil are hanging out alone. Han checks on Basil and finds out he's now a red dragon. Basil's flamethrower skill leveled up and he even gained toxin resistance after the dungeon bug. Han is a bit puzzled by what the group of dark mages is up to, but since Basil came from the basement, it's clear they're involved somehow. Han gives props to Basil for being a young dragon with great growth potential and magical abilities. He's determined to train him well, even if it takes a lot of work. He then shows Basil a slime orb and explains that it's a powerful item. He asks Basil if it looks appetizing and jokingly suggests he try it. Basil looks a bit hesitant, as if thinking it might be poisonous, though the dragon is also wavering. Han manages to persuade him to try it, promising him that it tastes amazing and that eating a couple won't hurt him. After a bit of back and forth, Basil finally decides to give it a try. Unfortunately, he ends up throwing up because of the terrible taste, which Han finds hilarious. He admits that he hasn't tried it himself, yet Han notices that Basil's magic power and toxin resistance really increased after eating the sphere. The slime sphere is a real power-up. It boosts your stats and even speeds up basic mana growth, something that would normally take an eternity. Basil notices the difference and gets totally hooked on the spheres. He just keeps eating them and his stats increase rapidly. Han is calmly watching all this and feels pretty happy about it. Suddenly, Ardell bursts in and says she's been looking everywhere for Basil and finally found him in the dean's office. She asks if he's seriously okay with her taking all the credit for handling the slime error, since that would make her much more famous and get her some very good rewards. Han scratches his head and says he doesn't really care. He just asks her to keep it down because she's hurting his ears. He mentions that life is much more important than stuff and warns that clearing the dungeon could attract the attention of the Dark Organization, putting him in danger. Besides, he doesn't want to be as famous as the protagonist. Ardell replies that if that's the case, he should keep it to himself because she isn't looking for fame either. Han questions why she's being so understanding and tells her straight up that he doesn't need pity from someone he barely knows, asking her not to bring it up. Ardell is furious and wants to know how he's never heard of her. He replies with a sarcastic comment about why he should care and asks for her name. When she says her name is Delia, his jaw drops in surprise. He suddenly realizes she's the incredible mage from a humble background who is always in the top 3 at the academy, the same girl who buries him alive in the story, and now she's right there asking if he knows her. He starts to panic, thinking that the person in front of him will kill him in the future. He feels like he's hit rock bottom with his bad luck by running into her, and he can't stop overthinking, muttering that this bad vibe is driving him crazy. Ardell notices his panic and asks if he's ever looked in the mirror. She drags him to one so he can see himself. She laughs and says she can't believe someone like him went to the dean's office just to pick something up. When he sees his reflection, for the first time since being brought back to life in Han's body, he's shocked at how dirty and disheveled he looks. It's hard to believe he doesn't look like the handsome guy he thought he'd be. Realizing that people don't avoid him out of fear, but because they can't stand the sight of him, he decides to stay positive. He decides it's time to make some changes, starting by fixing his hair and cleaning up. The next day, our boy walks into the classroom like he owns the place. His classmates start to whisper, some thinking he's a new transfer student because he looks so good, while others recognize him as Han, but they can't believe how different he is now. As they gossip, he makes a joke about being so handsome that everyone can't help but talk about him. A classmate even asks if he got some kind of makeover and wants to know his secret. Han couldn't believe that Crick, the annoying red-headed commoner, was trying to boss him around. Since Han wasn't the real deal, he refused to be pushed around. Crick kept mocking him and calling him a loser, but Han completely ignored him. Things took a turn when Crick started accusing him of losing his mind after getting a haircut. Han calmly told him to shut up or he would shut him up because he was fed up. Crick argued that he had every right to speak, especially since Han's family had abandoned him. Han replied by telling him to stop pretending he was so tough. Just then, Basil came out of Han's backpack, radiating a serious vibe and an icy chill. The tension between them makes Han nervous, while his classmates are shocked by Basil's beastly presence. Crick keeps taunting, but our boy fights back, saying it's a shame Crick chose the wrong guy to mess with. As Crick gets angrier, our hero smirks and enjoys watching him lose control. He turns the tables and says that even a newborn dragon can make a difference, because it's all about skill and not size. He warns Crick that if anything happens to him, there will be no turning back. Crick is super frustrated and tells our hero he needs to know his place. As Crick gets more irritated, our boy decides to challenge him to wait for the exam results to see who's really the best. Crick is totally shocked by this challenge. After class, our hero can't help but remember Crick's bold claim that he would bark like a dog if he lost. Now, all our hero has to do is wait for that to happen. This reminds him of his past life, when he was known for being great at fixing his own problems, which is why people used to call him the scoundrel. In turn, he always fought against injustice and never let anyone beat him, feeling proud of himself. Suddenly, he's interrupted by his classmates. They ask if he really plans to defeat Crick this time, joking that he'd be lucky to even pass. They laugh and ask how he dares to challenge Crick on the exam, acting like he's just fooling himself. They can't wait to see him fail and bark like a dog. Our hero stays calm, thinking it's the same story everywhere. People like them just can't let others live, even when they're doing well. He then looks at a blonde guy and asks for his name. The blonde guy looks a bit nervous and wonders why it matters. But Han cuts him off and insists that he tell him. The blonde guy doesn't have much choice, so he says his name is Edwin. When Han hears this, it dawns on him that Edwin is the arrogant prince who uses his status to boss around weaker people and is the leader of the bullies who have been bothering him. Without wasting any time, Han reaches into his backpack and pulls out his dragon, Ted. Edwin couldn't believe his eyes when he saw it. He absolutely did not expect the little guy to turn on him. The little dragon lunges at him, taking Edwin and his friends by surprise, who quickly run away, leaving him screaming for help. Then, the scene changes to a hallway where Ardell approaches him. She mentions the latest rumors going around and warns him that it's probably a good idea not to mess with royalty. Specifically, she mentions a guy named Edwin, whom he had just intimidated. Han says he doesn't really care, since they were the ones who started all this and he's just giving it back to them. A taste of his own medicine, she used to think he was just a thug with a noble title, but now she wonders if he might actually be more like an imperial prince who takes it out on anyone he doesn't like. Still, she finds him a little more tolerable and calls him a lost cause. As she gets closer, she asks if all nobles are completely useless. She points out how he made his dragon go after the bullies, made some random bet with Crick, and plans to beat him in some kind of test. She holds out her hand and tells him he's lucky she stepped in to help him, because who knows what would have happened otherwise. Han talks about how she's learning to manage her time with her beast, while he helps her improve her magic handling. She brushes it off and suggests they focus on training, even betting that if he manages to take her down, it would mean he'd actually have a chance against Crick. He confidently replies that he will definitely beat Crick. They start their showdown with Ardell attacking him first with a spell. Han blocks it with a quick barrier. All that serious training leads to a huge explosion, time flies, and the day of the entrance exam finally arrives. Once her test is over, Ardell finds out her results. The professor tells her she finished the magic exam in just 5 minutes and 31 seconds. Ardell can't help but smile and thanks the professor. Han watches her celebrate and thinks to himself that, although her past life gives her a slight advantage, Ardell's talent is undeniable. The way she tamed that beast was truly impressive. She's definitely a prodigy. A heroine in her own right. As he's thinking this, the professor calls Han for his exam. Han enters the magic cube for the Beast Domination Challenge and finds out he'll be facing a virtual monster that's the same level as his tamed creature. The goal is to win the fight. He chooses Cook and tells them he's ready. Suddenly, a huge snake appears, filling the area with a chilling vibe. It's an Adaptrion, a monster Han first encountered during his 3rd year. Its massive size and power make it clear that a single hit from it could be dangerous, just as the novel said. Han reassures Basil, telling him not to be scared and that he probably wants this challenge as much as he does. Although his dragon seems a bit nervous, Han reminds him how much stronger he's become after devouring all those slime orbs and tells him to have fun with the fight. Basil seems a bit more confident and the battle begins. And Han tells Basil to get closer to the snake since it can't see well. He plans to use his own body as bait to get its attention. As he prepares to cast a spell, Han reminds Basil to stay alert because the snake could hit them both hard if it attacks with full force. While Han distracts it with his magic, Basil sneaks into its blind spot and takes it down with his flamethrower, knocking the beast down instantly. The snake crashes to the ground, shaking the cube room, and the professor is stunned, wondering how Han's young, newborn dragon could defeat the mighty Adaptrion in a single blow. Han steps out of the cube room to find a crowd excited about his victory. He thinks that the effect of the slime orbs is working great and asks the professor if he passed. Humbly, he mentions that it took him a little while, but he got it done. The professor announces that they finished the test in 12 minutes and 36 seconds, getting an S rank. Han is completely in shock as the exam comes to an end. Han and Ardell walk out together. She tells him she got an S rank and is pretty sure she'll place first in her section. Han is happy for her, but he's also a little stressed, since he only wants to rank around 15th place to keep a low profile. This could ruin his plans. Ardell notices he looks a bit down and jokes that he worries too much, suggesting he might end up being a psychopath. She then changes the subject and asks him how he did on the arithmetic exam, reminding him that their rankings are based on their average score. He says the questions were a piece of cake, but admits he only got the question from Juan right on purpose. Adele agrees. She also made mistakes and mutters that the exams were too difficult for her, as she recalls having trouble with math. Han jokes around a bit and shows off. Adele changes the subject by mentioning that some problems weren't even covered in class, which makes Han pause for a moment and ask her if it really matters that he didn't answer Juan's question. Before leaving, Adele suddenly wonders what he's trying to tell her and warns him that losing first place could cost him his scholarship. She casually asks him if he solved question 27, the one about the magic circle. He says he thinks so. Adele looks surprised, and Han asks her if he made a mistake. She says she could be wrong and wonders if he's really sure about that. It turns out he actually solved question 27, which she and her classmates couldn't solve. Han is surprised. He didn't think it was that big of a deal, since it seemed like the easiest question on the whole exam. If it turns out he answered it correctly, he worries his name will start getting around. In Professor Deer's office, Professor Celine shares the scores and mentions that only one student answered question 27 correctly. Diebert is shocked, as he thought it was impossible to solve and asks who managed to do it. Celine reveals it was Han and points out that all his other answers were deliberately wrong, assuming he solved that one just to show off. Honestly, Han found the solution by chance. Professor Diebert remembers him as the top student in the Beast Domination exam and thinks Han is someone who really plans for the future, but even though Han would prefer a quiet life, it seems fate has other plans for him. The next day, the rankings are posted and a crowd forms around the bulletin board. Han first checks Crick's rank, and as always, he's in 302nd place. Then suddenly, the crowd starts whispering. Han is completely shocked when he sees he's ranked 11th. Crick looks completely panicked by the surprising results and seems ready to run off. Han calls him and tells him to stay with him as they leave. The other students whisper even more, some cheering for Han and saying he jumped to 11th place, while others mock Crick, saying he's bound to fall. They make fun of him for being so arrogant. Crick feels ashamed and can't even look Han in the eye. Han asks him what 1 plus 10 is. Crick stammers and says it's 2, completely bewildered. Han shakes his head and laughs, pointing out that the answer is 11. Just like his rank, Crick's face turns completely red as Han teases him, calling him the guy from rank 302. Crick clenches his fists, annoyed, while Han smiles, believing that Crick is still falling for his pranks. Han gives Crick a little flick on the forehead, deciding to let it slide this time. Crick's surprised. A surprised Crick yells, asking why he just hit him when that wasn't part of the deal. Han shrugs and says it's just a little payback for all the trouble Crick caused by bullying other guys. Crick wants to argue, but Han cuts him off and tells him to meet later in the empty club room in the basement so they can have some privacy. When Crick asks why, Han simply tells him there's something he needs him to do and asks him to think about it. He adds that he'd rather not make Crick look like a fool in front of everyone, but Crick should think carefully about his options. Crick gets really angry and starts demanding answers, but Han calmly asks him if he knows his father. Crick thinks he knows who Han is, Tae, the Blood Count who founded the Ardell Empire and defeated the Dark Mages during the Dark Magic War. He thinks Han is just trying to show off his noble status to scare him. Han isn't his true self, but he asks because he's genuinely lost. He tells Crick to spread some rumors. When Crick asks what he means, Han whispers something that leaves Crick completely shocked. His jaw drops and he can't believe Han is being serious. Han confirms it and tells him to spread the word quickly. Crick calls him a despicable madman as he walks away. In Anai's office, a butler mentions his son. Anai calls him pathetic and doesn't seem interested, too focused on his work. The butler says that Han is struggling financially and going hungry since Anai stopped supporting him, except for tuition and lodging. Anai scoffs at this, saying the hardship will help his son regain his memory. While Han distracts him with his magic, Basil infiltrates his blind spot and instantly takes him down with his flamethrower. The butler seems quite anxious and tells Anai that his son might be a different person now. Then he drops the bombshell. Han ranked 11th in the promotion exam, which completely shocks Anai. The butler continues, saying that people now call the young master compassionate, righteous, and handsome. Anai is truly confused by this sudden change and starts questioning the butler. He wonders if his son might be blackmailing someone to get those rumors started. The butler tells him the rumors are indeed true. Anai feels a bit skeptical, remembering when his son dabbled in black magic and how he regrets his harsh way of trying to get his memories back. Still, it's a kind of good news since his son is the one destined to inherit the estate. Anai gets excited and announces that if his son joins the magic department in the next promotion ceremony, he will restore all the financial support he cut off. The scene changes to an ATM, which is like a magical machine, and our protagonist can't believe his eyes. When he checks his exam results, he discovers that part of the allowance he thought was lost is actually back. He is surprised by how much it is. And he realizes he can survive the whole semester with that, feeling grateful for his father's honor and excited that his little plan worked. He pats himself on the back for being so clever. Just as he's enjoying all this, Ardell gives him a call. She asks him what he's doing and says it's time to go to the auditorium for their promotion ceremony. They walk together, and as Han walks down the hall, he starts to remember bits and pieces of the original novel. In Ardell Academy, second-year students are sorted into different departments based on their strengths. The magic department covers a range of magical abilities and offers a lot of hands-on experience. The natural sciences department mixes magic with research and experiments, along with some academic stuff. The theology department delves into the spiritual side of magic, like prophecy and divination. Finally, the necromancy department focuses on black magic and combat spells. Dean Ernest has just announced that the promotion ceremony will start soon. He told the students to come up on stage when their name is called and place their hands on the magic dice. These will determine what they are naturally good at and decide their major. In the original book, Han ends up in the necromancy department because he wants to use dark magic to get revenge on all the people who have looked down on him. But that desire leads him to a pretty tough defeat. Now he wonders if these magic dice will give him the same bad luck, even though he's changed a bit. He knows his recent decisions aren't exactly good, but he hopes he doesn't end up like the Han from the novel. The dean calls Lee's name the top student who is aiming for the magic department. As Lee walks to the stage, all his classmates cheer for him and say how great he is. Our protagonist thinks Lee is like the hero of the Soul Academy, and he can't shake the feeling that Lee's appearance is too perfect, as if there's some kind of cheat code involved. He wishes he could be the main character too, dreaming of being a handsome guy. Lee places his hand on the magic dice, and they start to glow. The dean announces that Lee is going to the magic department. As he watches, Lee realizes that Han will probably end up there too. You can tell that Lee saw this coming. Then, the dean calls for Soya, the next student. When Soya comes in, our protagonist remembers her as the incredible light mage and one of the main character's friends. The dean says she's going to the magic department, which he already expected. They continue to go through the assignments based on the rankings. The outstanding top student, Seymour Parker, is assigned to necromancy, while John ends up in the theology department. Our boy is watching the whole scene, totally amazed to see all those familiar names and characters around him. When his name is called, he's thinking about what could happen in 3 years. Maybe the necromancy department will start a rebellion against the academy, but get defeated by the main group. As he touches this magic die, he really hopes he doesn't get stuck in necromancy. Meanwhile, his classmates, they're over there gossiping about him and his supposed ties to black magic when the device lights up. The dean looks totally surprised and announces that Han has been placed in the magic department. He feels a huge wave of relief for having avoided necromancy, while his classmates find it hard to believe. As he gets off the stage, he's bothered by the curious and suspicious stares from his classmates, especially from those interested in black magic. Ardell gives him a thumbs up and says they'll probably meet in the magic department. He thought she would end up there too, as he asks her if she's excited to see him in the magic department. She nods with a sweet and cute look that makes him blush, and he quickly covers his face with his hand, feeling shy about it. Noticing his reaction, Ardell asks if something is wrong. He tells her everything is fine and suggests that next time she should let him know when she's approaching. Ardell is a little confused by that, but their conversation is cut short when Lee shows up. Lee greets him and mentions that he wants to be his friend since they'll be in the same department. Our boy feels a bit weird about Lee's friendliness and starts to wonder what he's really after. Lee seems a bit suspicious of him, pointing out that it's strange he's suddenly interested in the magic department when he wasn't before. With a relaxed handshake, Lee mentions he hopes they can team up. With no other choice, our boy shakes his hand. Lee adds in a low voice that he heard they were trapped in the dungeons before the practical exam. Han can't believe what he's hearing. Lee continues, saying that even with Ardell, a normal student wouldn't have made it out of the air dungeons. He's now really curious about what kind of magic our boy used. Our hero is surprised that Lee knows about that, especially since the professor is trying to keep it a secret. Han admits that Lee is very sharp, which makes it hard to know what he's really thinking. Besides, Lee has a strong personality and is basically the typical main protagonist. He's the type of person who believes that any villain must be defeated. Our boy starts to wonder if Lee already thinks he's part of some dark magic group and is checking to see if he's a threat. Then the scene changes. He heads to his room, thinking about the buzz that the Academy just built a new dorm that has 5-star hotel vibes when he finally finds his room and opens the door. He's completely surprised to see a guy inside who looks just as astonished to see him. The young man shouts in surprise, asking if he's really Sansa while pointing at him. Han looks a bit confused and asks why he's so surprised to see him. He smiles and says he's excited to have a roommate who's a total superstar. He's the famous student who made the critic cry. He even made royalty cry. Hearing this, Han feels a bit uncomfortable. It reminded him of when Fabian Edwin started acting tough after the promotion ceremony. He had asked why a royal like him was interested in necromancy while Han was in the magic department. To throw him off, Han let it slip that Fabian wasn't really a pure-blooded royal. Fabian was surprised and asked how he knew, but Han just rolled his eyes and told him to shut up, suggesting he wasn't going to reveal his secret. So Fabian backed off and apologized for causing trouble. Fabian feels pretty bad and complains that he doesn't belong in the magic department as his eyes fill with tears. Meanwhile, Han tells them to calm down and calls him a dummy, worried that their classmates will see him. But it's already too late. The other students start whispering, saying that Han was too cruel for making Fabian cry. Furious, Han thinks that his plan to fly under the radar and graduate without any trouble is now ruined. Back in the dorm, he can't help but think about the mixed reactions he's been getting. The guy introduces himself as Juan and mentions he's also in the magic department. Juan gives him a friendly smile and tells him he knows Han is a big deal, but that he hadn't heard of him before. However, our boy knows exactly who Juan is. He's one of Lee's most trusted companions. With a sharp mind and versatile skills, he also has an incredible information network. Juan notices that our boy seems a bit off and asks him if something is wrong. Han sighs, thinking about how unlucky he feels to run into all these main characters, and mutters something about plots to get rid of him as Han, but quickly dismisses it, saying it's nothing. Juan doesn't buy it, but to lighten the mood, he suggests they check out the dorm after unpacking. He mentions he has a guide map and insists it'll be fun to explore together as roommates. Han is a bit unsure, but ultimately decides to go for it. While they're at the dorm cafeteria, Juan mentions some comments from the upperclassmen saying it's much better to eat out. Han asks why, and Juan explains that the cafeteria food is terrible because it tastes like weird experiments gone wrong. So nobody eats there. He mentions that the students are so fed up with it that they've made formal complaints. Han quickly decides he's not going to eat there either. After complaining about the cafeteria, they head to the magic training ground, where practice never stops. Juan tells him to be careful where he walks, or he might get crushed and end up in the infirmary. Our boy suggests putting up a magic barrier. Juan agrees with the idea, praising him for being smarter than people think, while also cracking a few jokes at his expense. Although he feels annoyed, he tries not to make a big deal out of it. Our boy suggests they check out the field. As Juan keeps talking nonstop, he realizes that even though some of the things he says don't make much sense, there's actually a lot of useful information in his ramblings. Juan even admits that his comments can be helpful. After wandering around for a bit, Juan thinks it's time to head back to their room, but just then the sky turns dark and it looks like rain is coming. Han quickly realizes that this is no ordinary rain, but something poisonous and deadly. He yanks him along and urges him to head to the main building to warn their professor about what's happening. Juan feels a bit weird and confused because Han stopped him so suddenly. The other guy watches the strange scene as the rain soaks the muddy lawn, each drop filled with deadly poison. Chaos erupts among the students as news spreads that they must stay inside because the rain is poisonous. The tension rises even more when some realize that people are missing, including Ardell and Soya. Seeing the chaos, our hero suspects that the Dark Mages organization is behind this and plans to kidnap talented students as hostages to take control of the academy. He realizes this could be the start of the dormitory kidnapping incident. The system tells him that the main objective of episode 4 is to save and help his future wives survive. Is this a joke? The real task is to find and rescue the missing students. It also warns him that failing will cost him beauty points, but since he has no points to lose, he just ignores it. Ardell and Soya are sitting in the forest, all tied to a tree. Ardell struggles to break free, but Soya tells her to calm down and save her energy. She explains that these vines are quite difficult to break, so she's been looking for a weak spot, but hasn't found one yet. Ardell can't help but wonder why this guy in the black cloak has trapped them in this tree. She feels she's done nothing wrong to end up here. She definitely doesn't consider herself someone worthy of being targeted, unlike Soya, who has everything going for her. Ardell is just a commoner with no family backing. It's kind of similar to when she was trapped with Jan in that glitch dungeon. The thought of his face popping into her mind as a last resort frustrates her even more. Why is she thinking about him when he's probably just chilling in his dorm? Soya notices the tree outside and suggests it might be weak to light, since the sky seems to be covered in black fog. Ardell agrees, remembering that was the last thing they saw before getting trapped. Soya points out that those dark clouds seem to be artificially blocking the sunlight, especially with the huge tree trunk soaring into the sky. She adds that places like this usually let sunlight in, unless there's a good reason for it not to. Ardell gives her credit for figuring it out so quickly. Soya says she's ready to fight, pointing out that the toxic rain falling on everyone is definitely dark magic. She mentions that her purification skill is a type of light magic, and the best way to fight it. Ardell knows Soya's ability is powerful, but she's not sure it will actually help in this situation. With a sigh, Soya begins to chant a spell as light starts to envelop her. Ardell starts to think that maybe this amount of light could actually do the trick. Suddenly, a voice cuts in and tells them to stop playing around as the tree comes to life and attacks, breaking her spell. Soya looks injured and completely exhausted. The tree laughs at her, reminding her that no matter how much potential she has, she's still just a second-year student and too weak to take it on. It releases a thick black fog that makes it hard for Soya to breathe and starts to mess with her mind. The tree offers her something hard to resist, hinting that it can give her back everything she's lost. It talks about everything she's been through since joining the academy and how close she is to breaking. The tree promises her its power to help her overcome the situation and return home, making the deal sound too good to refuse. With the fog messing with her mind, Soya has a hard time thinking straight. Ardell steps in and tells Soya to get a grip, reminding her that they've both been through tough times, but they have to keep going. Then she confronts the tree and asks why it went for Soya first, instead of her. She's curious if it thinks she's an easy target. The tree seems impressed by her resistance against the fog and suggests that her talent is the reason the organization has its eyes on them, then it offers a deal. Ardell thinks that if the tree has focused on her, maybe Soya has a chance to pull herself together. She thinks the fog is using mind tricks to interfere with their desires and wear them down. If she can hold on through willpower, maybe she can defeat it. When the tree starts to say it will expose her desires, Ardell quickly snaps back, refusing to believe that's true. She really hopes Soya recovers soon, so she decides to buy some time by provoking the tree. She challenges it to come out of hiding and face her, calling it a coward. Enraged by her insults, the tree attacks with its roots and claims it can defeat Ardell in its current form. As the attack closes in on her, Ardell closes her eyes and braces for what looks like the end, while secretly hoping for a miracle. Then, out of nowhere, our boy shows up and unleashes an incredibly powerful spell that shoots a beam of light right at the tree. The light sparks some hope in Ardell, and she's amazed at how the magic looks a lot like Soya's light magic. But when she takes a look, she realizes Soya is still unconscious, As our boy confidently walks in, Ardell is shocked to see him. She can't believe he found them and performed such a strong light spell. Han jokes about how she's talking so much after almost biting the dust and explains that the light was just a simple spell amplified with a magic magnifier from his bag. He then gets concerned about Ardell, who sarcastically says she's fine and asks if he thinks she's a loser like him. Jokes aside, our hero suggests they team up to face the fight as he holds out his sword. Ardell is pretty thrilled to hold the sword from her training days. She feels touched by Han's kindness, but then he cracks a joke about her wanting to bury it somewhere, which annoys her a bit. But she lets it slide and says there's no point in holding back now that they're up against a dark magician. Suddenly, a guy in a black cloak limps out from behind a tree, showing he's in a lot of pain. Han jokes about whether this tree is actually the guy's true form. Our hero asks the guy why he's looking at him with such a grudge and if he wants to end up losing his other eye too. The guy gets super furious and uses the roots to attack Han instead of just striking him. The roots rise up and rearrange the whole area to give him the advantage as he starts to regain his strength. He says it's Han's turn to disappear and orders the dark roots to go after him. Meanwhile, the fog swirls around our hero, getting into his head and filling it with toxic whispers. It taunts him, calling him a useless student who will never graduate, and says his family has abandoned him. The voice tries to convince him that he'd actually be better off with dark magic. Han brushes off the weak mental attack and asks if that's for real. Is that all the guy's got? This leaves the man completely stunned. The guy gets more and more frustrated and demands to know why his brainwashing magic is doing nothing. Our boy calls him weak, which only enrages him more. He sees that the guy has merged with the tree, basically becoming one with it. Han remembers that the huge baobab is actually an ancient trellis tree, a concoction created by dark mages to enhance brainwashing magic and mental strength, but Han knows the solution is easy, since monsters like this rely too much on their mental powers, which makes them physically weak. He prompts Ardell, wondering if she understood that the other tree is weak against light. He also mentions that trees generally don't get along with fire, which makes Ardell wonder where he is going with this. Suddenly, our boy calls his pet. The guy gets furious and demands to know how he dares to do that. He then sends the tree's branches flying towards Han, but Basil responds with a great explosion of flames, burning the tree's roots to a crisp. A branch slams into them, but Han quickly checks on Basil and is relieved that the hit was not too bad, leaving Basil okay. More branches fly towards him, and he cannot believe how close they are to impacting when just before they hit, someone cuts them down. It is Ardell who is there, and she teases that he owes her one. Han laughs, admitting that he thought he was a goner. Ardell's tone shifts as she points out they still need a solid final move to end it all. She mentions that Soya seems to be back to her usual self, but none of them have graduated yet, and taking on a dark mage is way above their pay grade. She says that if anyone can do it, it is definitely Han. This time, Han is sure that she is right. The dark clouds above begin to scatter, letting rain fall on the tree. The guy in the black cloak looks shocked and asks how this is happening. The man wonders if this is some kind of magical phenomenon, but dismisses it, thinking a kid is still just a kid. He orders the branches to attack again, insisting that as soon as the light is gone, this place will be all his. The branches wrap around the boy's legs. He laughs and says he cannot believe he fell for that. The man asks if he is scared or if he is just a little crazy. Our hero calmly takes out his wand and zaps the branch with lightning. The lightning travels through the branches and hits the tree's roots under the man. A massive bolt of lightning strikes from above, shattering the branches and taking down the tree. The man was frozen in shock, unable to comprehend what just happened. He starts screaming about how such weak magic can be so strong and accuses Han of messing with his head and ruining everything. Han is about to walk away, but stops when he hears the man muttering about finding the cube. He asks what he is talking about, but it is too late. The man and the tree are already starting to disappear. Han tries to remember, and it seems somewhat familiar, maybe from the original events. Then Soya comes over, congratulates Han on his incredible strategy, and asks if they need to talk. Soya thanks him and points out how using the rain could help put out the fire on the tree and give his lightning magic a boost because of the humidity. He admits that she is right, but points out that if she had not cast that defense spell, light magic just in time, he would have been a goner. Soya says she only did it because he gave her clear instructions. He realizes she's quite good at light magic, especially with how fast she acts, while Soya is impressed with his strategy. She asks why the dark magician kidnapped him, and Ardell explains that his whole plan was to brainwash them and turn them into his minions. That's when he truly understands how clever yet terrifying the dark magician's plan is. Trying to use 2 top students from Ardell Academy as chess pieces, plus if he had managed to brainwash Soya, ordinary light magic wouldn't have done a thing against him. Basil seems really worried and insists he's fine, but keeps acting grumpy. He can't help but ask why everyone is making such a big fuss when he's the one who hurt his back trying to protect the group. Ardell and One step in and scold him a little. Their concern catches him by surprise and makes him realize how important teamwork is. In the end, he smiles and gives everyone credit. A moment later, as they're making their way through a muddy swamp, Juan complains about how sticky the mud is. Han snaps back that he volunteered for this and tells him to stop whining. Meanwhile, Ardell and Soya decide to take a break and relax inside the tree, even though the poison is gone with the giant plant's death. Han knows that wild swamp areas are still tough to get through. He finally finds what he came to this gloomy place for. Opening the hidden door, he remembers how in the original story he found this glowing magic treasure while saving Soya. Now it's all his and he gets to decide what to do with it. He can't help but smile at the mountains of gold, thinking that even a loser villain has to make a living somehow. One of the others asks if the treasure is real and if it actually belongs to anyone. Han tells him that even if it had been someone's property, that person would be long gone by now. He points to the statue at the entrance, saying it's an artifact from 300 years ago. When Juan asks how he knows that, Han snaps out of his daydream and replies that it's just basic history, since the tribes in the area used to worship Cerberus and make statues like that. While someone questions if that's really the case, Basil is busy staring at the gold. He suddenly makes an excited noise that startles Han. He turns around and sees a totally thrilled Basil hugging a gold bar. Han jokes and asks if Basil has grown fond of the gold, but then he notices the bar looks more like a block of cheese, remembering how much Basil loves cheese. He wonders if the creature is just interested in anything yellow. With a smile, he tells Basil and Juan to take as much as they want. As they look through the treasure, Han stumbles upon a small chest and wonders if it's what he's been looking for. He thinks about how in his tough world, power really matters more than gold or shiny trinkets. Survival is what really counts. He opens the chest and realizes it's the treasure the hero from the original story got after defeating the Dark Magician. Inside is a worn-out item that Han thinks looks like a black magic spellbook. Juan gets scared and tells Han to leave it alone because it might be cursed, asking him if he's still into black magic. Han ignores him, saying it's just a misunderstanding. As he opens the book, it starts to float and glow brightly. Han realizes it's connecting with him and turning into a basic magic spellbook as the book finally lands in his hands. Han tells Juan to check the title again. Juan is still a bit skeptical, but he sees that it's just an ordinary magic spellbook. Han realizes the book completely adapts to whatever the user needs, which makes it super useful for keeping a low profile. Whether the Dark Mage left it there or not doesn't really matter, since it's very useful for covering the basics. Basically, it's worth a ton of money. The book lets him learn spells instantly, like a cheat code for mastering what Ardell Academy students spend an entire year working on. So as they're getting ready to leave, Han suddenly hears a voice calling out to him. Weird, he turns around, but no one's there. The voice calls out again and he starts to wonder if he's the only one hearing it. Then he looks at the glowing spellbook in his hands and realizes this is no mere coincidence. The voice tells him he's entered a whole new world, and that everything he does here is going to change things. Han starts to realize what that means, realizing that his small decisions could completely change the original story. He wasn't supposed to be in this place at all. In the original plot, he was meant to be a character who wouldn't make it. Han starts to think the book he's holding might actually be the book of prophecy that guy mentioned, the one that can see through lies and make its predictions come true. He's torn between backing away and stopping himself from getting involved, but his desire to make things right pushes him to get involved with the academy instead of staying on the sidelines. Suddenly, a voice tells him to step forward and help guide the world's miracles, warning that staying idle could lead to destruction. Before he can fully process it, a huge wave of power overwhelms him. He collapses and starts to wonder if this is the true price of hearing those prophecies. Han wakes up in the dorm and sees Juan looking more relieved than someone who just passed a pop quiz. Juan tells him that he really scared him, to which Han apologizes and asks for some time alone to chill, saying he's fine. Juan heads out to grab some snacks, leaving Han alone with his thoughts. Han starts to realize his decisions might have set off a chain reaction that could get the main characters killed. The Dark Mages could win the war, causing the Ardell Empire to collapse like a poorly planned group project. With everything on the verge of falling apart, he feels like he's doomed no matter what he does. Just when he's thinking about kicking back and living a quiet life, fate throws him right into the middle of all the chaos. In his past life, he made a lot of enemies and faced betrayals that left him in a dark place. He doesn't want to go through that again. So when he feels like the world is falling apart because of him, he can't ignore the voice urging him to act. Sometimes he wonders why he takes it so seriously, but deep down he knows he must face it head on. Besides, he's the only one who knows how the story of Soul Academy ends, since he's a reincarnated soul. It turns out a dark sorcerer was behind the whole kidnapping, but the Academy is keeping it under wraps. Even though Han and Juan snuck out to rescue Ardell and Soya without permission, they only got a light punishment for leaving campus. Han wonders if this will just lead to more annoying chores and complains about not getting paid for all the trouble. His frustration peaks when he discovers that his first practical magic project is a group project. Group projects feel like being on a bus with a wild passenger, a chaotic driver, some troublemakers, and even a troll. It's a real-life lesson on how to deal with all kinds of people. Han thinks that group projects are way more annoying than the Monster House, especially since they take up a lot of time in the practical magic class at Soul Academy. He wonders if they'll have to enter dungeons to get stuff and thinks about how great it would be to earn extra points for tackling the toughest dungeons, but then he remembers that if they mess up, they get a big fat 0 for not meeting the deadline. Then, Professor Green throws a game changer by letting the students choose their own groups. He gives them 10 minutes to get organized, and the classroom erupts into chaos. Han is super frustrated by this and just wishes someone sensible would step in and take charge for him. Suddenly, someone steps in. Han opens his eyes and sees Lee right in front of him, asking him if he wants to join the same group. The other students are completely shocked by this surprise offer. Han raises an eyebrow and asks Lee if he's really asking him to team up with him for this project. Lee eagerly waits for an answer, but Han shakes his head and says no, because it seems like too much work. Lee looks like he's been hit by a spell, totally stunned, trying to process what he just heard. Later, in the dorm, Juan and Ardell ask him how he could so easily turn down the genius Lee. Han just shrugs and says his teammates feel comfortable because they've played together before, which makes it the obvious choice. Now, everyone is left wondering if he's playing hard to get, or if he really just prefers a quiet life. He knows deep down that he's actually scared. He has no idea what could happen if he gets too close to the main character. Trying to change the subject and stop overthinking, he starts talking about their uniforms, pointing out his red tie as if it's the most interesting thing in the world. Juan chimes in, sounding like he's reciting from a school brochure, saying that since they all wear the same color, it really looks like they're part of a team. Seeing them laugh and get excited about the uniform colors proves that no matter how smart they are, kids will always be kids. Then, our boy pulls out a poster and suggests they stop talking about trivial stuff and pick a dungeon to dive into. He proposes a B-rank dungeon called the Forest of Phantoms, but Ardell jumps in with a suggestion to aim for something tougher, like the A-rank Sorceress's Cabin. Han gets what she's saying, but argues that their success in the dungeon mainly depends on the items they get. He's heard that there's a secret item hidden in the Forest of Phantoms dungeon, which leaves everyone surprised. Soya chimes in, saying the item could really help them stand out from the other groups. Ardell mentions that the extra rewards could win them Professor Green's favor, and Uno asks how Han always gets info that even he misses. Han just shrugs and says, it's all about reading. He then suggests they head in. Everyone agrees and is super excited about it as Han watches everyone settle into their roles. He realizes that being a jack of all trades really suits him, but he can't help but remember how Leon discovered the hidden rewards in the Forest of Ghosts during his 3rd year at Soul Academy. If he wants to be truly part of the group and not just an outsider, he knows he must step up his game, so he tells them to get ready and meet in 2 days. Later that night, someone tells a guy about the dungeon they plan to explore. This guy, Seymour Parker, is totally on board and says it's an excellent choice, suggesting they prepare for it. A couple days later, the group meets at the library to enter the Forest of Ghosts. Han mentions the rumor that ghosts enter the library in the morning since the barrier is weak. Ardell insists that ghosts don't exist, but then a voice comes out of nowhere and proves her wrong, making her scream. When a guy appears, he quickly mentions he's a student and says that ghosts are nothing more than monsters, so it makes sense. Han notices his strange tie and thinks he's not a magic student, then asks him what he's doing there. The guy introduces himself as User Barton, a first-year student joining their team. Han remembers hearing about a talented first-year student in divination magic. User promises he won't be a burden and asks to join. Suspicious of his intentions, Han questions him and asks if he's in on something with Seymour Parker. User hesitates, and Han guesses he has a specific reason for being there. Before User can explain, a woman intervenes and tells them not to jump to conclusions. She says that User could be useful if they go to the chaotic shelf area in the Forest of Ghosts. Ardell screams again in fear, and the girl quickly apologizes and introduces herself as Yuna, a second-year theology student and User's guardian. She reveals that User can see ghosts and explains that he recently saw something strange during divination practice, which motivated him to join their group. June mentions that it's the first time she's seen User so focused and, to make sure he doesn't get lost, she got permission from a professor to be his guardian. Han is totally fine with it and jokes, asking if June has any secret plans, like being a spy. She laughs and says she only agreed to come along because of Han. When Han asks why she's interested, she replies that he's totally her type. This takes Han by surprise. She goes on to explain that ever since she joined the magic department and their eyes met, she felt a spark, with his bright eyes, his slightly messy brown hair, and that mischievous smile when he laughs. He is exactly her type of handsome. June admits that she loves checking out handsome guys, and when Han looks surprised, Juan jokes that his soul is being stolen and adds that June is famous for attracting handsome, high-achieving guys. He mentions that teaming up with theology students makes sense, since they're dealing with those dark attribute monsters. Dismissing Han's worries, Soy agrees, and Han can't believe how relaxed everyone is. June suggests they start right away. User grabs a book to get through the barrier, and a bright flash of light temporarily blinds them. Suddenly, a portal opens and Han realizes. Basil instantly recognizes it as the dungeon entrance and grunts in surprise, since he only knows about slime dungeons. Han grabs him to calm him down and moves forward. And a moment later, the battle begins. Han tells Ardell to go for it, and she unleashes her sword against the enemy while Juan supports her from the side. Han starts to see that Professor Green was completely right about how teamwork is key in this dungeon. A special item is needed to see the ghost monsters, and if the players don't coordinate properly, they could end up fighting each other. Before facing the real threats, the group organized and defined their roles, with Ardell and Juan handling reconnaissance. Since they are very fast, Soya stepped in to face the dark monsters using her strength. While Basil dealt serious damage with his fire attacks, they moved quickly among the smaller monsters, and Han felt pretty incredible as he stepped on a ghost. Seeing how their plan was being carried out perfectly, John thinks the group is truly impressive. Even without extra help, User agrees but says that Han is even more incredible. Han can track ghosts without studying theology or using sophisticated equipment. User feels it's like trying to fight blindfolded. But still hitting every move, he remembers a prophecy about Han being the outsider from the magic department. Destined to save the world, and seeing Han and Basil makes him believe it's all true. Suddenly, User snaps out of his daydream and yells that he feels an incredible energy coming from the right. Smoke comes out of a nearby house, and Han can't shake the cold, heavy feeling that makes common monsters look like cute kittens. Panic invades Han. as he starts to wonder if they are already facing the boss. He remembers that the boss in the ghost forest has a creepy way of using psychic attacks to read and manipulate people's memories. But they prepare for the fight anyway. Ardell shouts that the boss is on the move and asks if everyone is ready. Han suddenly realizes they might have been hit by a similar attack without noticing. The boss unleashes its scythe and strikes Han right at that moment. He feels how difficult it really is to face a boss monster. It's much faster than he thought. Since this attack isn't physical, all they have to do is ignore the voices and keep their minds together to stay safe. Han finds himself floating in complete darkness and can't feel anything around him. He starts to think he might be in the void room that his pet is causing. But it seems too intense for a B-rank dungeon. A loud scream cuts through the silence. Saying that he has defeated him, then someone he knows starts to apologize, and another person angrily replies that he should have left if he couldn't handle it. It's at that moment that he understands he's trapped in one of his own memories. The memories make him think that he's still as terrible as ever. He remembers a doctor asking him if he was the fool who backstabbed his superior. Another doctor calls him a psychopath and warns people not to mess with him. They don't even know he's listening. But he doesn't really care. He did what he had to do. The superior they were talking about was a complete madman whose abuse harmed people. He reported him knowing there would be consequences. Nowadays, people avoid him and label him as the snitch. Regardless of whether he's a genius or not, all he gets are insults for ruining a senior's career. So they think it was no big deal. During a tough shift, a colleague sees his hand shaking and asks if he's okay, reminding him that it's time for surgery. He just stares at his trembling hands, not knowing how to stop them, and says quietly that he has no idea what's going on. When the hospital director finds out, he's really furious and wants to know why someone with trembling hands is even allowed to perform surgeries. Without wasting any time, he orders that person to be removed from the operating room immediately. When he talks to his psychiatrist, the doctor basically tells him that the shaking in his hands is due to some repressed feelings that were awakened in the operating room. He gets it. It makes sense, but he's not really thrilled about it. The psychologist mentions that he'll need to continue with therapy to see any change, which makes him roll his eyes internally, as if it's just another problem that will take forever to solve. He starts to wonder how his life ended up like this, and what kept him going during his internship, feeling somewhat lost. His thoughts are interrupted by a hospital staff member who asks him directly why he chose clinical practice. They call him a failure with shaky hands and remind him how he went from being a top student to feeling completely useless. With every scornful look and cruel comment, he feels his mental strength crumbling more and more. Finally, it all becomes too much and he leaves the hospital on his own. He thought he was different now, but when he arrives at the Soul Academy, he realizes he's still that weak, broken version of himself. Suddenly, a light appears over Han, and to his surprise, Basil is floating in it. He's amazed at how Basil managed to enter his mental space, especially since it was set up by the boss monster's psychic attack. As Basil gets closer, he catches Han's eye and reminds him about their contract. That's when it dawns on him. The contract links a mage's feelings to a monster, so Basil must have sensed his emotions and flown to find him. Han laughs and scoffs, saying that Basil is more like an emotional puppy than a dragon, and Basil just lunges in for a hug. Han realizes that his decision back then wasn't just to spite his arrogant senior, but it was more about doing the right thing, saving lives and taking down corruption. He nods at Basil for helping him clear his head and says it's time to move on from this empty space. Suddenly, Basil starts pointing like crazy. Han looks over and sees a heart floating in the darkness. He wonders if it's a hidden treasure and thinks that being inside the monster shows him things he couldn't see from the outside. Han sees the phantom lamp. It's basically the boss's heart and where all its power comes from. He concentrates to gather his energy and yells for Basil to help him. Basil unleashes a huge blast of fire that powers up the 3 gigantic magic arrows Han shoots toward the heart. The arrows slam into it and pierce through it as they burn it. The boss screams as the phantom lamp breaks free and floats in front of Han. Ardell runs over, excited that he finally made it, and mentions that Soya escaped earlier, but everyone had started to worry because Han was taking so long. Juan asks if he really defeated the boss, and Han shows them the system message saying he has completed the B rank dungeon called the Forest of Ghosts. Juan can't believe it and says they thought Han was just messing around, since the hidden items are very hard to find. Han nods, saying their assumption makes perfect sense. Soya sees the lamp and wonders if that's the secret item. She can't take her eyes off it, thinking it's incredible, but her smile fades when she mentions that something isn't right. She points out that they totally underestimated the boss's mental attack, and yet they were still absorbed by the void. Juan asks if such a powerful spell should even be in a B-rank dungeon. Ardell agrees, adding that the lamp's power seems way too strong for this place. Han narrows his eyes as he realizes something and quickly asks where Junius is. The question startles everyone, and before anyone can say a thing, shadowy figures in black robes lunge out and grab Junius. Parker steps forward with a smirk, making fun of the theology students for trying to protect Han's crew. He accuses them of not being completely honest about their intentions. He insists they hand over Junius and ally with him, or else there will be trouble. Parker tells Han that if his group joins now, it'll really help finish the project, since they're almost done and just need a few final details. Han starts to feel uneasy and asks what Parker is really plotting. Parker explains they're short on people because they focused on magic users, and brings up Han's idea about summoning demons. Ardell can't shake this uneasy feeling and starts to wonder if the Academy is actually involved in dark magic, and if the necromancy department is behind all this. She remembers Han joined Parker's crew in his first year and now worries he still has ties with those necromancers. That thought really scares her, especially considering the dark mage Han kicked out of the boba tree could have been part of a bigger plot to trick them all. Han thinks the ritual is a bit tricky, but doable, and offers to help. Parker smiles, relieved, knowing Han will pull it off. Han starts listing what they need. Parker chimes in that they have everything except the medium, which is why he's here. Ardell can't believe how chill everyone is about this. She's curious what this whole medium thing is about, but Parker just brushes it off as some silly magic, then drops the bomb. It's actually to summon demons, and they need a strong human host. The boss getting stronger wasn't just for fun. They're looking for a powerful mage, preferably one with holy blood. Parker says Han always makes things so much easier. Han holds out his hand to Parker for a handshake, casually mentioning it might be a good time for them to team up again. The moment Parker grabbed his hand, Han zapped him with a jolt of electricity, sending Parker to the ground. Shocked, Parker yelled in pain, asking what the hell Han was doing. Han just laughed and said it was pretty foolish to think they could work together after everything that happened. He reminded Parker how close he came to getting caught in his scheme and pointed out the two big mistakes he made. Trusting Han too much and completely underestimating him, Parker struggled to his feet, with dark energy crackling around him, and asked Han if he really had the guts to betray him. Parker's anger flared as he accused him of thinking he could just get away because he was transferred to the magic department. He unleashed a powerful spell, screaming that Han would be the next sacrifice. Han barely managed to dodge it, surprised at how fast Parker was. Once he was on his feet, Ardell rushed over to check on him. She was very worried that he might be reverting to dark magic. She mentioned that if that were true, she would have taken him out herself. Han didn't know whether to be flattered or scared by that, and joked that at least it was nice to know she cared. Parker was still standing after being hit by the lightning, and he realized just how strong he really was. Han noticed it too. That kind of blast would have taken down anyone, but Parker isn't just anyone. He's the main villain for a reason. Han tells Ardell to take care of the necromancers who are after Soya and him. He knows Parker is focused on him now and won't stop until he's finished. Ardell nods and gets to work. Before either of them can make a move, Parker fires an arrow of dark energy straight at Han. He barely manages to throw up a shield in time, but the next blast is even stronger and completely shatters the barrier. Han feels totally overwhelmed by Parker's power, and this isn't even his full strength. Parker didn't come to play, he came to win. An explosion sends Han's wand flying, and before he can reach it, Parker grabs him by the neck and lifts him up as if he weighs nothing. Parker tells him to be careful and mentions that he knows too much and he's starting to become a problem. Han realized Parker was tough, but maybe his pet could turn things around. Basil, unexpectedly, zapped Parker from behind with a burst of flames. Parker was startled, yelled and dropped Han before turning to see what had happened. Han got to his feet clapping, looking very impressed with Basil's skills. A notification flashed on the screen, saying that Basil had reached level 10 and unlocked a new skill called Maya Spike, which allowed it to unleash fire and electricity within 1 meter without getting hurt. Han was amazed and told Basil to try out the new move without a second thought. Basil shot electric spikes all around. Han, terrified, yelled that it was crazy, saying they all would have been fried if Soya hadn't put up her shield in time. Han fell to the ground, exhausted, and muttered that he didn't realize the spell would drain him so much. Letting Basil go wild was a mistake, as he couldn't control the pet's power once it got excited. Parker walked out of the flames and laughed at Han for calling himself a tamer, saying there was no way he'd fall for such weak tricks. Han couldn't believe Parker was still standing. Parker walked closer, wand in hand, making it clear he wouldn't give up. He swore he would make Han pay no matter what it took. Just as Parker was about to deliver the final blow, someone hit him over the head and knocked him out. Han looked up, confused, and saw a woman in a robe holding a shovel. She let out a sigh of relief and said she was lucky to have her grandfather's trusty shovel with her. As she pulled back her hood to show her face, she asked if Han. He was fine, he was mesmerized for a second, but then he just collapsed from exhaustion as the cost of the dungeon hit him hard. After everything that happened, the Necromancy and Dark Magic Club is on hiatus for now, and a user and the team are taking some well-deserved time to relax and recover. Surprisingly, their project results are spectacular, scoring a perfect 100 out of 100. They're the only team in Professor Green's class to achieve that. Ardell and Han didn't expect to get so much attention after those crazy days. Han is in the Academy's underground prison. As he approaches a cell, the boy inside comes closer and says he heard someone coming, so he thought he'd take a look. When Parker sees Han, he demands to know why he's there and accuses him of mocking him. Han stays calm and tells Parker he'll be out of prison soon. Parker gets furious and says that's ridiculous. Han asks him if his father would really let him stay locked up and hints that he might even be cut off for causing a scene. Parker gets frustrated and wonders why Han is there. Han gives him an envelope and mentions that his father will bail him out to keep the family name clean. He stresses that the family doesn't tolerate anyone who embarrasses their last name. Han understands that Parker is just a scared kid who might not be worried about dark magic, but the thought of being disowned by his family terrified him. When Parker opens the letter, his surprise is obvious. Han explains that the letter is just a backup plan in case Parker gets into trouble again. He could pull it out and say that a dark magic group is blackmailing him. It's all made up, but the symbols look pretty legit. Parker admits that it looks real. Han tells him that it will make him look like a victim and give his family a way to cover it up. When Parker asks why Han is helping him, Han just smiles and hints that it comes from someone at the Academy. Later, our hero is chilling with Ernest and a lady in a robe. Ernest asks him if he got the letter, and Han confidently replies that he did while sipping some tea. The next day, Ernest calls our boy and offers him an incredible reward, saying he will grant any request. Han asks him to help Parker with his current problem. Ernest is a bit surprised, since Parker is the leader of the Dark Magic Club and is involved in the whole mess. He knows it's not something that can be solved with a simple punishment. Still, he understands that Han sees something good in Parker. Han goes on to say that Parker really lives for revenge and kicking him out could push him further into the abyss. He believes that if Ernest shows some understanding and helps him, the Dark Magic Club could fall apart, and Parker's skills could be used for something positive. Han also points out that it's probably safer to keep Parker close in case he decides to seek revenge in the future. Ernest smiles and tells Han that maybe he's cut out to be a professor. The lady introduces herself as Natalie, the one who saved Han from Parker's deadly plan. Han remembers her from the original story as that brilliant and charming student everyone adored, but right before he passed out, she appeared out of nowhere with a shovel among the necromancy students, which completely surprised him. Curious to know more about her, he asks who she really is. Natalia admits she's only there to keep an eye on the Dark Magic Club, because the dean sent her. Han figures out she's a spy and starts to think the necromancy department isn't really paying attention to the dark magic studies. Ernest steps in to say that monitoring the dark magic research helps prevent students from messing with it. Natalie says she almost went crazy during the demon summoning ritual that Parker was in charge of. She admits she really needs Han's help to do her job and thanks him in such a sweet way, it makes him blush. Han insists he's only helping to save his own skin. Ernest tells Han that the International Magic Research Society wants him to represent Ardell Academy. Han tries to get out of it, saying the top students should be the ones to go. Ernest replies that he's truly earned it, after all the incredible work he's been doing lately, and mentions that Professor Green even gave Han extra points, on top of his perfect score. Then Ernest drops the bomb that Han is actually in third place in the department, right behind Lee and Adele. Han is pretty shocked, while Natalie cheers for him in her room. Han is still reeling from the shock, even as Basil gives his head a playful bite. He yells and starts punching the wall, venting about all the extra annoying tasks he has to deal with. Someone asks if the competition is getting to him, and Han grumbles about not aiming for third place and how everything is so annoying. Juan jokes that he's just unlucky and mentions that Soya wouldn't be impressed with his attitude. Han shoots him a death glare, so they decide to shut up for a while. Then someone suggests checking the dungeon reward to lighten the mood. Han opens the chest and finds an egg inside. The system makes a sound and says it's a Tila egg, an A-rank item that hatches into a legendary creature. Han panics, since it's another reptile. Someone laughs and jokes that Han is a natural-born tamer, which makes Han yell at them to shut up. The Magic Research Conference in the Sand Empire is a huge event where mages from all over gather to exchange ideas and learn from each other. The school competitions are super intense, with a lot of pride on the line for both the nation and the schools. On the way to the conference, Han starts to feel sick in the carriage. Adele notices and asks if he knows anything about herbalism, since that's the second topic. Han draws a blank and asks what herbalism is. She explains how important it is and mentions Dean Ernest's push for awards, which makes Han feel even worse. Lee chimes in, saying Han just needs to understand herb mixing to get by. He throws a book at him and tells him to get studying until they arrive. Han rolls his eyes, but he knows this is just typical Lee. Meanwhile, Adele steps away to get some drinks. Later, Lee hesitantly brings up the map that Han and Adele saw in his room the other day. Han remembers picking it up from a dark mage near the bobby tree. Since Lee noticed it when he passed by, he asks if Han still has the map, and Han says yes. Explaining that it's too risky to leave it in the dorm room, he also remembers how pale Lee got when he first saw it. The map is linked to a cube, a very dangerous artifact. Although the Ardell Empire has many white mages, dark mages are still causing trouble, especially at Soul Academy. That's why Han decides to go to the event instead of skipping it. The dark mages are dedicated to collecting cubes, these ancient artifacts that enhance dark magic. Even someone who isn't very strong can become a powerful mage with one of these artifacts, which makes them extremely dangerous. In the original story, the dark mages secretly build a tower to gather all the cubes and access unlimited magic, and ultimately try to destroy the world. The heroes achieve a great victory by destroying the tower and getting the cubes, but it's a difficult path with many key characters dying, which darkens the story. The first cube appears in the Sand Empire, and when they get there, Han and his team dive right into classes and activities, including herbology. The next few days are very busy. The night before the competition, Han is chilling in his room, stretching and thinking about the big event. Ernest is totally focused on them winning prizes, but since herbology isn't really his thing, Han decides to relax and take it easy. Just as Han is about to fall asleep, he hears a sound outside the window. He calls out to see who it is and hears Lee laughing, impressed that Han noticed the noise. Han replies that it was hard to ignore all that racket, opens the window, and asks why Lee didn't just come through the door. Lee explains that he didn't want to be seen, since there was someone in the hallway. Han asks who's out there, and Lee replies that it's Casper, a scout mage with an invisibility cloak. Han is surprised and wonders what a guy like Casper is doing here. Lee is a bit hesitant, but admits he needs a favor. He wants the map. But before he can go into detail, Han guesses it's about the cube. Lee, surprised, asks him how he guessed. Han plays dumb, saying the map mentions a cube, assuming Lee already knows how important it is. A while ago, Lee's parents sealed away the cube's power, but unfortunately, the dark mages took them out while they were trying to interfere. When Lee came across the map, he probably realized the dark mages were back in action. Now he seems focused on picking up where his parents left off, and is determined to track down and protect the cubes. Lee mentions that tomorrow is the last day of the conference and points out that the map says the cube is buried nearby. He asks Han to hand it over, but Han refuses. He trusts Lee, but he's not ready to give up the map. Our hero remembers how much he regretted losing the cube in the book and thinks it's better if he handles it himself to avoid bigger problems down the line. Han tells Lee that he's not giving up the map, but that he's willing to go with him. Lee isn't too thrilled and argues that the cube is too risky and he doesn't want Han to get tangled up in this. Han just shrugs and says he never backs down from a challenge, admitting he doesn't understand. Doesn't really understand the cube or what Lee is trying to do, but he promises not to get in the way. Han points out to Lee that the map is his, so he should be in on the plan too. Lee is a bit surprised but agrees, and Han smiles. But then Lee quickly reminds him that they have a competition tomorrow. Han looks a bit confused when Lee says they'll handle the important stuff after that. The next day, Han and the other two arrive at the venue. As always, Han silently watches Lee, who intends to win the tournament, so they can sneak into the magic department and steal the cube. Han is surprised when Lee mentions the magic department and a map showing the cube hidden in the third basement. Getting in won't be easy because of the security, but Han thinks a direct approach is too difficult. Lee says there's another way. They need to win the tournament, which offers prize money and a tour of the magic department. The basement is staff only, but Han realizes that Lee plans to use the tour to sneak in. Han suggests bringing Ardell along, since sneaking in alone won't work. The tournament is team-based, and the tour allows 3 people, so it's easy to invite her without revealing the real plan. Lee agrees, but he feels it's risky and isn't sure that Ardell will join them. Han is confident because she would never turn down a chance to face the dark mages. When the day of the tournament arrives, Han starts to realize that he's dragged Ardell into this, but he knows nothing about herbology. Still, he decides to improvise and give it his all in the competition. In the competition hall, the students are excited to see Professor Miller, the master of herbology. He explains that magic isn't just evil, since it can be used to help people, which is what herbology is all about. Then, he changes the subject and begins to talk about the rules. Each team has to create a potion that's never been seen before. The team that gets a perfect score from all the judges will win. Everyone starts thinking about how to create something truly impressive. For days, they've been gathering ingredients in anticipation of something like this, but he finds it more intense than he expected. Winning the tournament is their best chance to get the cube, so he stretches and gets to work. Ardell is surprised, since Han can barely understand the book that Lee showed him, and wonders how they're going to impress the strict professors. Our boy just smiles because he's already figured out the next step. When the professors try the potion from Ardell Academy, they are impressed. Professor Miller feels a surge of creativity. Another professor calls the potion incredible, and yet another says he feels like his inner child has returned. As the mood lifts, ideas begin to flow and their creativity reaches its peak. The Ardell Academy team creates a drink called the Potion of Art. Han adds herbs from the Sen Empire to give it a pleasant aroma and a creative touch. It's not practical, but it turns elemental magic into something artistic. Han says the potion was transformed into a bold and creative spectacle instead of just a battle potion. His passion impresses the professors, and the team wins entry into the magic department. The professor says it's been a long time since students have shown such creativity. The grand prize is a trip to the magic department to enhance their skills. The 3 of them follow along. The professor to the civil affairs office, where the staff helps with things like admissions and wizard registration certificates. The places Bruce is showing are so boring that they can barely even pretend to be interested. Hal tells the professor that the tour was great, but everyone feels tired and needs a break. The professor understands, since the department building is huge. A teacher calls him over for help, so he asks the group to rest while he steps away. The 3 of them look at each other and rush toward their goal. Ardell asks about the basement door, while Lee assures her it's handled and tells them to move faster before the guards arrive. They know this is their only chance to find the cubes and escape in the third basement. Our hero is surprised they made it without getting caught. Lee gives teleportation scrolls to Ardell and Han and explains that most of the guards are on the 4th level, where the main vault is located. Ardell asks about a 3rd scroll, but Lee says they are rare and expensive. He considers it fair to give them the scrolls since Han is in trouble and Ardell came to fight the dark mages. When Lee spots something shiny ahead, he moves to investigate it. Ardell follows him, while Han wonders how Lee got the scrolls. As they approach a glowing vault, Lee steps on a wire that triggers an alarm. Red lights flash and sirens blare around them. Ardell tells them to fall back, but Han insists the cube is inside. She asks how he knows, and our guy points to a screen showing the start of the first cube's 2nd main episode. He needs to retrieve the sealed cube within 24 hours or it's all over for him. Somehow, our guy grabs the cube, but red lights are flashing and alarms are blaring, warning about intruders. A voice announces that an explosion spell will secure the vault. Han quickly tells everyone to run as the explosion goes off. After escaping, Han feels relieved, but gets spooked by approaching footsteps. It's Professor Burt, the math teacher from Ardell Academy. Confused, Han wonders why he's there. Our guy tells him they're lost, but the professor laughs, dismissing the excuses. He sarcastically tells them they should be grateful for finding the cube. Han, in shock, asks him if the professor is a dark mage. The professor mocks the vault's weak security and reveals his plan to retrieve the cube. He points out how they've been struggling without their map, but are thrilled that the students found the cube for them. With a smirk, he asks if they will step aside or face the consequences. The battle starts quickly. The professor overpowers Han's group with his dark magic and asks why they keep pushing when it's obvious they've reached their limit. Ardell tries to defend with a shield, but she collapses shortly after. Lee rushes to her side, while Han thinks about how right the professor is and how they're barely holding on since their skills aren't good enough. Even though Han was pushed into the battle, he's glad he managed to grab the cube earlier, but getting past the professor with the cube feels like a lost cause. Thinking fast, he yells to Lee and throws him the cube wrapped in the teleportation scroll he was given. He tells them to take it and go. Ardell hesitates, worried about him, but Han yells at her to go. She reluctantly agrees, but not before warning him to come back safe, or she'll give him a beating. The professor calls out to Han, saying it's typical of someone so unpredictable. Like stealing the cube right in front of him, he won't let him go after all the chaos he's caused. As he moves his hand, it glows a dark purple color. And suddenly, a series of magical chains surround Han. Although he's lost the cube, the professor calmly mentions that he knows Han has the map with the locations of the other cubes. The professor pressures him to hand it over. Han, with a defiant smile, says he doesn't have it, asking if the professor is sure he isn't looking in the wrong place. The professor gets annoyed and asks Han if he's lost his mind, wondering why he's so fearless. Han just smiles and says he has complete trust in his partner. Basil appears behind the professor and prepares to unleash a breath attack. A large wave of flames shoots towards the professor, forcing him to let go of Han. Furious after being hit by the flames, the professor directs his anger towards the dragon. Han finally sees the opportunity that has opened up for him. It's his chance to eliminate the professor, but he can't help but feel that leaving this guy alive is not an option. After escaping the vault with Basil, some dark mages start chasing them through the forest, firing spells at them. Han raises a shield to protect himself. These mages are determined to stop him. He knows that if he keeps defending like this, he'll soon hit a wall. And that wall comes faster than he thought. Han's magic is depleted and he falls to his knees. The damage from the professor's previous attack is much worse than he expected. At this rate, he's about to be in big trouble. The dark mages conjure magical bows and arrows, and Han feels the tension. One of the arrows shoots directly at him, but Basil jumps in front to take the hit. Han's vision turns red, and his thoughts race. Although Basil stands firm, the mages panic when the dragon launches a surprise attack. The flames spread quickly through that part of the forest. Han runs with Basil, knowing the little dragon is in danger because of him. Suddenly, a voice shouts to protect the protagonist, and he sees Ardell hiding behind a bush, thinking they've already gotten rid of the mages. Ardell tries to calm Han down and assures him they are safe now. She sighs and warns him not to do something so risky again. Feeling guilty, Han explains that he didn't have a better plan. His mind races with worry for Basil, who took an arrow meant for him. Han regrets not tending to Basil's wound immediately, but he was too focused on escaping. He knows that even a dragon can die if its heart is pierced, overwhelmed by despair. Fragments of memories resonate in his mind. He reflects on his fate, feeling that it's already sealed if he continues on. The worst outcome would be ruining his reputation, but with the Guardians in trouble. Things always get complicated. If all hope is lost, he knows he must prioritize his own survival. Considering how much Basil means to him, Han is willing to do whatever it takes. He asks Ardell if she has some of that elixir on hand, wanting to borrow some. She wonders what he's planning, since not even the professor could help someone so seriously injured. Han takes the elixir and says confidently that he can make it work. The elixir of art enhances creativity like never before, and drinking it allows you to create something out of nothing for a while. Han drinks the elixir, hoping to seize that small opportunity he needs no matter what. He is determined to save Basil, using magic to gather a lab coat and a scalpel, declaring that the operation is about to begin. Han kneels on the ground, using magic to help him perform the surgery. Ardell knows that red dragons are rare, but there are many other monsters that can be tamed. Our boy seems to be on edge, but he's using his magic to save a creature that probably won't make it. Ardell wants to stop him because she's afraid that if things go wrong, she might lose him too. But when she locks eyes with Han, who is focused and determined, she can't bring herself to intervene. He manages to remove the arrowhead and now just has to stitch up the wound, which is the final part of the surgery. Han sighs in relief as memories of his past life surface. Despite his experience, being near an operating room always made his hands tremble, and he would run away if he couldn't hold a scalpel properly. Now his hands, which used to tremble, are steady and confident. Han announces that the operation is over, and Lee is astonished to see him save a dying dragon without using magic. Ardell notices that Basil's breathing has stabilized and the bleeding has stopped, even without healing magic. Han realizes that operating on a monster is unusual in this world, but he understands their astonishment, since Basil was in critical condition just moments before. He sighs, happy that the surgery was successful and relieved that he won't face criticism for the lack of hygiene, as might have happened in Korea. Han reminds himself that he's no longer in Korea and that Basil isn't a dog, but a dragon. He is no longer the same Han as before. All of this has come together to create something incredible. A notification appears, stating that the healing light has been successfully applied and its effects have begun. A soft glow appears over his pet, which comforts him. He prays for his dragon's survival and then collapses, leaving everyone worried. After passing out, Han wakes up staring at a ceiling. He realizes he's been unconscious for a few days and is now in the Ardell Academy infirmary. Ardell tells him that the school has handled the situation, but it's hard to stop the rumors that are circulating. People are saying that the top students were attacked and that it might be related to the recent chaos caused by the dark mages. Han whispers that the rumors are very close to the truth. He figures the adults are handling the aftermath on their own and decides not to worry anymore, since he's not a child anymore. At that moment, Lee arrives with the cube and explains that the dark mages, the magic department, and others are looking for it. Ardell mentions that they worked hard to get it and have no intention of handing it over. Lee agrees, but informs them that there will be a hearing at the magic department. Han is surprised and sighs as he holds the cube, determined not to give it to anyone. 1 week later, Louis Maxwell, from the magic department, demands a strict punishment for the students accused of breaking into their base. Another professor defends them, saying it must be a misunderstanding. Louis questions Bruce, asking if wrecking vaults can really be called a misunderstanding. Bruce insists it was just a reckless mistake, and suggests giving them a warning. Louis disagrees and says they must address this now before it escalates, He asks the students what they took. Han remains calm, knowing that the department has no idea what was inside, since only the owner of the vault knows. Han's plan is to simply deny everything and claim that the vault was broken by accident. The professor gets angry at his ridiculous excuse. Han repeats that they got lost, used a detection spell to find the exit, and accidentally broke into the vault. The professor, frustrated, tells the judge that the vault is empty, that the property is damaged, and that items are missing from the third basement. He argues that the students are the only outsiders, so they must be responsible. The judge says they must wait for the owner of the vault, who has been called as a witness. Suddenly, the doors open and everyone is surprised to see the principal. Ernest comments that his students seem to have caused some trouble. A confused young professor insists that this matter is under the control of the magic department. The principal replies that he needs to get involved since he is the owner of the vault. Han remembers that Principal Ernest started collecting and sealing the cubes at the Soul Academy. He has no idea that the principal has kept the cube in the magic department's vault. The principal mentions that the kids only went down to the vault because he asked them to, but they often get lost when they find it by accident. They rush to retrieve the cubes, since they are just kids and mistakes like that always happen. Ernest hands the list of the missing items to the judge to prove that they are his. And Louis is surprised when it all turns out to be true. Since everything has been cleared up, the judge says the students will receive a 7th level sanction from the magic department, a letter of apology and 30 hours of community service. The judge asks Louis if he has any objections, and if not, the final decision is made. Han talks with the principal, who tells him that he will not ask questions and hands him a letter. Our hero is curious about whether the principal knows about the cubes and why he is letting them go without digging deeper, but he is also anxious to know how much the principal knows as he opens the paper to read it. Ernest mentions that Berta's professor has suddenly disappeared from campus after attending a conference and has not returned. The principal asks him if he knows anything about this, since the academy failed by not recognizing Berta's true nature. First, he asks if Han has been dealing with the professor and how he managed to survive. Han says he survived thanks to his role as a tamer and gives credit to his partner Basil. Ernest says it was really Han's talent that made it possible and insists that it's not just a compliment, but a genuine belief. Once he deciphers the note, it will be clear if he has been too optimistic about Han. Han looks at the paper and starts to think it might be some kind of code. Ernest explains that he found the note on Diebert's bookshelf, as the professor always writes in confusing arithmetic codes that Han has difficulty understanding. The principal believes that Han might be the one to decipher it. Han thinks the Dark Mage professor's code could lead to another cube and asks for time to investigate. The principal feels proud of Han's determination and becomes more confident in his abilities. John asks Lee about his project with Han after everything that happened. Lee admits he doesn't trust Han, saying he seems a bit weird. She teases about how often people ask her about Han, joking if he's already told all his secrets. When Lee wonders who leaked that information, she points to the crystal ball, saying that Bolim is the source. Lee ignores it, deciding it's okay to share some details, since he received a good tip about the cube. He recalls finding Han suspicious during their first year, and wouldn't be surprised if he became a dark wizard. But after spending more time with him, Lee feels he can't be that bad, unless there's betrayal involved. June agrees and asks if he wants to check if the prophecy about Han is still on. She jokes about the bread, saying she's happy to help such a handsome guy, and tells Lee to watch out for upcoming events. She promises to bring fresh bread every day, hinting that Bolim says something unusual is coming. On the other side, Ardell complains about the grueling 30 hours of community service. Han asks her if that's really what they have to do. She snaps back that he should be helping with the cleaning instead of focusing so much on an egg all day. Han defends himself, saying that properly caring for the egg will ensure it grows up strong and healthy. Suddenly, Wani bursts into the room with the latest news about the monster in the specimen room, claiming that this time it's totally true. Han remembers stories about the monster that started with someone panicking about monsters in the specimen room. Like an old ghost story, the younger students started spreading rumors, claiming it wasn't a small creature and even saying a student died. With no proof, the rumor was dismissed, leaving Lila embarrassed after confronting the professor. Then, Han gets a notification about episode 3 of Drake, which confirms his suspicions. Drake's main ability is stealth, making it invisible even to the professors. Some students can see it, while others remain unaware, which perfectly explains how the Drake stays hidden. Someone mentions that Lila's visit to the professor caused a huge uproar, and the students started doing some pretty crazy things. He says that people are saying the monster is a Drake, which he finds ridiculous. Han is intrigued by that sharp guess, but if they could capture the monster, its skin and blood would sell for a fortune, which is why students are gathering to hunt it. Han rolls his eyes at all this, calling it just a silly rumor. He wonders who in their right mind would buy into this and join in such an absurd act. When Han enters the classroom, he's annoyed because it seems there are more foolish people at school than he thought. A guy is trying to get everyone hyped up about hunting a Drake, saying they could earn extra credits and possibly advance straight to the 3rd year. Our boy thinks these students are ridiculous because a Drake is not an easy opponent. Then, a guy named Derek approaches Soya and asks if she wants to join his hunting party. An immediately understands Derek's intentions and is sure Soya won't agree because she doesn't need money or grades. To Han's surprise, Soya considers the idea and decides to join, making him uncomfortable. Another student tells Derek to stop joking, pointing out Soya's confusion. He asks why someone like her would want to join a hunting party, but she insists she's serious and asks to join. Han wonders if Soya has lost her mind. He remembers Drake's hunting party from the original story, where Derek led disoriented students on a wild adventure. Soya wasn't part of it back then, which leaves Han wondering how things will unfold, especially since none of those groups ever came back. As the evening light fills the room, Soya writes while reflecting on her father's lessons, who taught her that magic requires a good heart and a strong will. He built their family's name with magic, and his words have always stayed with her. Now that her family's reputation is in ruins, Soya wonders if she can live up to his hopes. Restoring the Aranet name is up to her, becoming a mage for the first time. She has lost her top spot to Han, and her hard work no longer seems to be enough, as she begins to doubt her ability to beat him in the final evaluations. Her only chance might be to join the Drax subjugation team to earn extra points. The Drax are vulnerable to light and fire, and they are probably in the dark specimen room. The rest of the team isn't very skilled, so this is her chance to reclaim her place as a light mage. Soya is fully determined to do it. Jun tells Han there's no way Soya can defeat a Drake on her own. When Han presses her for more details, she reminds him that her predictions come at a price. He hands her a bag of bread, and she can't help but ask why he's so interested in Soya. She guesses he might have a crush on her. Rohan denies it quickly. He explains that even though Soya was his favorite character in the book, now he just wants to make sure she doesn't get eliminated too soon, since he knows she can't take on Drake. He starts to think about what his next move should be. The scene shifts to the battle. Soya casts a light magic barrier just in time, but Drake's wings tear through it and create a huge hole. She realizes that without the barrier, the damage would have been much worse. The team is in a tough spot. And one of the members suggests they retreat, since 2 are already out of commission. Plus, the dark specimen room gives Drake the advantage. Even as the others argue about retreating, Rick stands firm, insisting they've prepared traps, and they just need the beast to fall into one. Another teammate chimes in, pointing out that the creature seems to be avoiding the traps, as if it knows their locations. Derek shakes his head, insisting it makes no sense because Drake shouldn't be that smart. The group starts to argue, and their focus is completely broken. Drake sees its opportunity and charges at them, launching an attack. Derek is knocked down, confused, and tries to process what's happening. He has a hunch that someone is manipulating Drake, and he's not wrong. Hidden in the shadows is Juge's Tane, a 5th-year tamer who is taking advantage of the fact that the professors aren't paying attention. Juges has set up shop in the specimen room for his plan. He thinks the mages at Ardell Academy are complete fools, and he blames them for wiping out the Dark Mages group during that great magic war 15 years ago, which cost his father's life. Now he has revenge on his mind, and can't wait to make the Academy tremble in fear. Soya is the last one standing and knows she can't do it all by herself, but she's not ready to give up. She channels all her remaining magic into a light spell, raising her wand and hoping for help. a voice calls out from behind Soya, asking if she's lost her mind. It's Han who quickly pulls her up and tells her to save her magic. With everyone else out of commission, she's the only one with light magic who can actually fight. He tells her to stay sharp. Soya completely ignores him and asks when he arrived. Han watches Drake's movements and sees they're too sharp to be natural. He thinks another tamer might be pulling the strings and decides to test his skills. Suddenly, Han throws something at the beast and tells it to eat up. The creature immediately devours it, leaving Jujas confused and scratching his head, wondering why he lost control. Han smirks, knowing a thing or two about taming. Dracs have this instinct to bite anything that moves while they're eating. Drake seems a bit dazed by the sphere, and Han laughs as he wonders about its taste. As the monster stumbles, Han seizes the moment and yells at Soya to aim for Drake's heart. Soya grips her wand tightly, channeling her magic into it. A bright light flashes at the tip as it strikes the confused Drake. Jujas watches furiously as he loses control over the creature, with no one controlling it. The monster goes wild and puts Jujas at risk. Desperate, he decides to use dark magic to subdue it, even though it takes a lot of effort. Dark energy surrounds Drake, and suddenly, its eyes glow red. Soya senses the strange vibrations, and Han realizes that dark magic is being used. He quickly deduces that the tamer must be a dark mage. Han feels frustrated because everything seemed to be going well until now, but this sudden turn of events completely throws him off. Suddenly, Han gets a notification saying he's unlocked a new skill. The message asks if he wants to activate the tamer's touch. Han suddenly unlocks this awesome new skill, leaving him amazed as his affinity skyrockets. Another message pops up saying that Drake already has an owner, but it can still be tamed. The thought of taking someone else's pet is a little scary to him, but then a new prompt appears, asking if he wants to give it a try. Han grins because why not, and decides to go for it. Energy surges through him, turning his eye golden like the Dracs and forming a connection between them. Soya is completely shocked, trying to figure out why Drake is suddenly acting so calm. She asks Han if he was the one who made the beast behave. Han smirks and says it seems like taming reptiles has become his new skill. Jujas can't believe his eyes as he watches his pet being tamed by someone else. After all the work he put into it, he's furious and unleashes dark magic from his hand. Drake suddenly raises its head and Han panics, wondering if he's lost control. The beast heads towards Jujas, who starts celebrating like he's the king of the world. Han can't help but wonder how he managed to tame it in the first place, but suddenly, the beast bites Jujas and starts drooling all over him. Han yells at the beast to spit him out, and after it does, the creature completely drains poor Jujas, who has been using too much of his dark magic. Finally, everything calms down. The headmaster arrives after reviewing the report and is completely shocked to discover there's another dark mage causing trouble at the academy. He congratulates Han for taking the initiative to deal with the people behind Drake's chaos and for saving the students' lives. As a nice reward, Han ends up with a big bag of money, as you'd expect from a wealthy family. Back in his room, he starts thinking about this new skill he just got. It's something he'd never seen before in the story. The Tamer's Touch allows him to temporarily tame a monster during a fight by rapidly increasing affinity, but the drawback is that he can only tame one monster at a time. Han thinks it's a bit weird that he got this skill instead of Basil, who he believes would have been a better candidate for it. He thinks it would have been great to test the skill more with Drake, but it was just a one-time thing. Besides, his dragon really doesn't like the new beast. In the end, he decides to hand Drake over to the professors with Basil by his side. He comforts his little dragon and tells him he's not leaving him behind. After the battle, Han receives a reward for completing the third main episode, and he's very excited. He can't wait to open the shiny chest, hoping for at least a rank B prize. To his surprise, he ends up with a rank A spatial bag. He takes it and is completely thrilled, because getting one of these bags would normally cost way more than just a few gold coins. Then, a new notification pops up, telling him he'll receive an extra reward for keeping casualties low. The message says he needs to check inside the bag to claim it. He's surprised, but he's starting to understand what it means. In the original novel, no one made it out alive, but that's not the situation this time, as even the seriously injured students survived. Han turns the bag upside down and pours the extra reward onto the table. He finds a folded red card and picks it up. When he looks at it more closely, he sees it's filled with mathematical formulas. He quickly realizes it's the kind of stuff the math professor always includes on the exam. Looking at the paper more closely, he suddenly gets a strong sense of déjà vu from the formula on it. Suddenly, it all clicks and he's left speechless, waking Basil up from his nap. He places the red paper next to another note from Headmaster Ernest and notices they're quite similar. He had managed to decipher most of the notes, but he'd been stuck on the last part for a while. Han has been trying to figure out if the symbols need to be deciphered or if he just has to solve some equations thanks to the professor's confusing math lessons. After checking the new paper, Han finally understands that he has to process the numbers the symbols represent. After several sleepless nights, he finally cracks the code. The numbers seem to point to a location, room 205-1, a classroom for necromancers. He waits until the coast is clear, and then opens the door and enters the dim room. As he moves cautiously, he spots cabinet number 14, and it's actually open. Checking the Academy's student roster, he discovers that the student who used this cabinet disappeared a long time ago without a trace. Upon opening cabinet 14, Han finds what he suspected all along, a glowing object that turns out to be another cube. He realizes the professor had gotten this cube from some dark mages and he had kept it there. He quickly puts it in his bag, feeling a mix of relief and stress about keeping it safe all by himself. To keep a low profile and avoid drawing attention, he decides to lay low for a few days. But his plans are disrupted when June won't stop looking for him. Our hero is starting to get annoyed with her, always following him. She pouts because he keeps rejecting her requests for a date. Han tells her straight up that he's just not interested. She playfully asks him if it's because he's actually interested in CIA, which leaves him totally surprised, and he wants to know where she got that from. Then she changes the subject. She clasps her hands together and asks him in the most adorable way to join her. That's when Han realizes she's trying to drag him into this astrology contest organized by the theology department. She tells him about the contest, which is about basic astrology, and that the prize is 3 theology credits, which could really help boost his grades. Han is somewhat tempted because getting credits from another department means he could skip a class next semester, which would help him avoid Professor Green's horrible class. Jun tries to convince him, saying she's the best in the theology department and promising it'll be a piece of cake for him. Han hesitates for a moment, but in the end, he decides to participate, drawn in by how good the reward sounds, so he spends time with June getting into theology stuff until the day of the astrology contest arrives. Han feels tense and out of place. Suddenly, June tells him to look at something quickly. When he sees the judging panel, he's completely shocked to see someone who looks a lot like him, but with a different hair color. Han discovers that, no joke, it's actually his older brother Han Sek. If he had known, he would have avoided the contest. Sek always wears elegant black clothes and is highly respected in the magic community. He started studying astrology at 12 years old and is now the main prophet of the Ardell Empire, having followed a successful path from the very beginning. Han Suk is the Count's legitimate son, while Han is the illegitimate son who faced discrimination during his childhood. Because of this, Suk feels inferior and holds a grudge against his younger brother. This situation is understandable, as Han often tried to humiliate Sok at the beginning of the novel, and even though Han is looking at Sok now, he wonders if his brother sees his younger brother the way he should, but he doesn't. Suk is becoming a respected prophet, freeing himself from the shadows of his family and his status as an illegitimate son. At that moment, he doesn't feel happy seeing his younger brother. He sighs, hoping his brother won't be spiteful and give him a low score. He wouldn't care if it only affected him, but June is on his team and it wouldn't be fair to penalize her. However, June is excited and encourages Han to do his best. Han knows that's all he can do. All the groups sit at their tables and fill out the questionnaire. Afterwards, they present their demonstrations using the crystal ball and levitation spells. Time flies by quickly. At some point, Suk asks an organizer why the magic seems so advanced, and if the questionnaire answers have been shared. She explains that the questions come from an outside contractor from the magic department, which makes a leak very unlikely. She understands his concerns about the high score, but reminds him that June is the top second-year student in the theology department. This means her magic partner could also benefit from this. She asks Suk to put his doubts aside and proceed with the awards. Although he's not sure, the organizer goes on stage to announce the winners. The team that won first place in the astrology contest is Young from the theology department and Han from the magic department. When they hear the announcement, they celebrate happily. June grabs Han's arm and joyfully tells him she told him they would win. Han thanks June for helping him identify an object in a box and is grateful that everything worked out. The hero learns that astrology involves a math-based analysis of planetary positions, which makes it easier for him to study. On the way to the stage, June jokes that Han must be a genius and suggests he join the theology department. Han appreciates the compliment, but says he worked hard to get into the magic department. After the awards ceremony, the organizer hands out certificates and trophies. She tells Han that Seok wants to speak with him privately. Afterward, Han goes to a room for tea and wonders if Seok was originally in this episode. Han remembers that Seok is a side character who didn't get much attention in the original story, which leaves Han uncertain about what will happen next, especially since Seok usually has bad intentions. Seok enters the room, and Han asks him what he wants. Seek sits down and says he has some advice. Han is surprised because he was expecting insults instead of advice. Seok accuses him of using tricks to get what he wants. He warns Han not to be arrogant, saying he's too old for indulgence now. Our boy gets annoyed because things are going just as he expected. He wonders how old Seok thinks he is to act so smug. His arrogance perfectly matches his face. Frustrated, Han tells him to get to the point. Seek tells Han to keep an eye on the Castia family during the summer vacation. Han is surprised and asks why he's bringing that up, but Seok doesn't want to explain, saying Han should just follow orders and be grateful for winning the contest. This annoys Han even more, because Suk is acting as if he gave him the award instead of acknowledging that he and June earned it. Suk ends the conversation and tells Han to leave. Han stands up, realizing that Seok is kicking him out as soon as he's done talking. A few days pass, and the first semester's final exams are over. With vacation approaching, Han tosses a book on magic practices as he wants to forget about it. He's earned enough credits from the astrology contest, so he'll be able to skip Professor Green's classes in the second semester. Ardell enters Han's room and asks him how his exams went. Noticing the suitcases next to him, she asks about them. Han explains that he's planning to go home for the vacation. Goddess Ardell asks if he is reconciled with his family. Han replies that it's great to see things are going better. Han doesn't want to share that he doesn't get along with his family and that he'll be staying with the Castia family. He remembers he's going back home because of his older brother, Suk, who insisted on it. He then asks Ardell if she is also going home. She replies that her family wouldn't be happy to see her, so she will be staying in the dorm. Han isn't sure if Ardell is telling the truth, because no one talks about her family and she lives alone. As they say their goodbyes, he promises to see her after the holidays. After a quiet train ride home, Han arrives at a large white building. He is amazed by the wealth of the original Han's family and wonders why he focused on dark magic instead of enjoying a quiet life. Han bows to the butler and says he's back. The butler asks him to wait and explains that his father ordered him to deny him entry without permission. Han thinks about how his father is treating him that way after a year and a half. The afternoon flies by, and before Han knows it, it's already getting dark as he sits on the steps by the entrance. A couple of maids walk by and notice he's still waiting there, surprised that he hasn't moved yet. One of them jokes about how determined he is, saying she would have already found another place by then. The door behind him swings open. He turns around, expecting his father, who greets him and invites him in. Han is surprised, thinking it's a bit sudden to be let in like that. Inside the huge mansion, Han is sitting at a table the size of his entire dorm room. The Count is talking about how he heard that the Minister of Magic is involved in some kind of scandal and wants all the juicy details. Han realizes that's the reason he was left outside. His father thinks he's involved in it and is punishing him. Although Han hoped his better grades would improve the Count's mood, but honestly, that's just classic Count behavior. Han finds it funny how his father is always quick to hear the latest gossip, but totally clueless about other things, and he can almost guess where the information is coming from. Han quickly glances at a servant who flinched in fear. That reaction makes him realize the rumors about him are getting distorted. When the Count was surprised by Han's words, he cheekily added that it made sense for a father to be curious about why his son had gone to the Ministry of Magic. At that moment, the Count gives him a sharp look and asks if he really thinks he can lecture him. Han feels a bit nervous under that intense gaze. It's no wonder people call his father the bloodthirsty Count. Trying not to make things worse, he tells his father he's sorry for disappointing him, but explains that he was at an event at the Ministry of Magic. Han shares that he was there representing his school and asks the servant to pass a piece of paper to his father. The Count looked visibly shaken as he looked at Han's grades. With all those high ranks, he had a feeling it was fake, so he asked Han about it. Han explained that cheating on the practical exams was practically impossible, and even mentioned that his final results were even better. In a fit of frustration, the Count crumpled the paper and called Han a troublemaker who finally showed what he was made of. With tears streaming down his face, he expressed how proud he was, leaving Han completely bewildered. It seemed like a dramatic turn in the Count's character. Suddenly, everyone around him, servants who used to overlook Han, started to notice him. Han was no longer just the neglected kid, now he had the Count's support, which put him on the path to a promising future. A couple of days later, Han realized that Suk was right. He really should return to the family estate during the vacation. While he was having tea in the garden, the Count asked him if there was anything he wanted to learn. Han mentioned he was interested in horseback riding, so the Count had a servant prepare 10 horses. When the Count asked if he needed anything else, Han asked for some high-quality, finely crushed gemstones. Han knows it's almost time for the Terra egg to hatch, so he prepares its food right after adjusting the temperature. He organizes everything perfectly. With all the preparations ready, the hatching should go smoothly. As he spends time near the egg, he thinks about how Terras are classified. Maybe they aren't the best fighters, but they're incredible for getting around and become super loyal once you tame them. On the other hand, they are harder to tame than dragons. Han finds out that it takes 1 to 2 weeks to train a newborn Terra, and that, if you don't train them, they can cause a lot of chaos. While he's reading, he notices the egg starting to shake and gets worried when he sees it start to move more violently. Suddenly, it cracks and there's an explosion that fills the room with smoke. Han waves the smoke away while holding his wand, confused about how he ended up with a Class A monster. Through the haze, he sees a small Terra crying and floating in the air. Han casts a golden spell to prevent the Terra from running away. The moment it hatches, the little monster is ready to escape, even with the magic holding it in place. It cries louder than the Count did when he saw Han's grades. Exhausted, Han collapses on the floor and realizes just how strong a newborn monster can be. If this Terra gets away, it could cause real chaos. Normally, Han can tame most monsters with his magic skills, but this Terra is ignoring him right from the start. Han thought it would be better to calm the restless Terra with a hypnosis spell instead of a sleep spell. He aimed his wand and let the spell fly. Slowly, the creature began to relax, and Han was relieved that it worked. He held the calmer Terra and tried to build trust, making it feel safe. Han draws on his past experiences to calmly pet the Terra and help it relax. He knows it will take some time, so he spends the entire week working on taming it. With the summer vacation giving him plenty of free time, he dedicates himself completely to the task. When he finally succeeds, everyone is shocked. His roommate can't believe it and says it's insane, since even professional monster tamers usually only handle 3 monsters, and here's Han with 2 already tamed, including the tricky PETA. Han tells his roommate to calm down and points out that they're actually there for something else. In front of a huge sphere, his roommate suddenly remembers they're about to sign up for their classes. Even though they're just there to register, one can't contain his excitement and has to share the news. Han totally agrees, so one passes him a well-organized class schedule. Han gives a thumbs up, while one winks at him and wishes him luck. As it happens, there's a huge crowd at the registration spot in Ardell Academy. Course registrations are done at a specific time and place known as the Magic Center. To register, you had to find a place with a special magic circle, draw your own circle to log in, and complete the whole process. The tricky part was that the magic centers moved around a lot the day before. Our hero received a voice message reminding him about the registration. It said that different centers had varying levels of magic flow and suggested meeting at a place with a strong flow, just as a senior student recommended. This race to find the best magic flow is almost like trying to get a decent Wi-Fi signal nowadays when Han arrives at the spot. He quickly realizes that the magic flow is really strong. This whole semester's registration process now makes sense because everyone is trying to avoid Professor Green. Standing next to Han, Juan tells him there are only 10 seconds left until the magic center opens. A countdown begins, and just as it hits 0, all the other students get a notification. The magic center for course registration is live. Everyone starts clicking to get to the registration page and rushes to find the courses they want. Han rolls his eyes as he watches the clumsy students with their course selection. After 6 years at the academy, he knows exactly which courses to take and finishes very quickly. When he's done with his schedule, Uno admits he panicked and ended up with Professor Green's classes. He asks Han how he did it so fast. Han smiles and says his time at a gaming cafe prepared him perfectly for this. Uno worries about Han's answer, feeling completely confused by his vague words, and asks him to clarify. Even after the crazy course registration event, the story doesn't give Han a break. As soon as he returns to the academy, he gets a notification informing him it's time to start the 4th main episode. This episode is all about the necromancy dorm. The clock keeps ticking until the dark mages are defeated, and if you win, you get the staff of Ardell. There's no room for failure here. Han remembers that the whole mess started when some students from the necromancy department were attacked by dark mages and ended up summoning skeletons on campus. What was supposed to happen in 2 years was moved up because the dark mages failed to get it right before. In the original story, this event caused a lot of casualties, which made Han tense up when he first read it. Fortunately, his knowledge of divine magic from his theology studies helps him, and with a group of heroes who have that savior complex vibe backing him up, they manage to sort things out easily. The 4th main episode ends quickly, and Han gets the Staff of Ardell. It's a solid staff with a unique aura that allows the user to cast several spells at the same time. People really seem to let their guard down at the worst times. When Han checked his class information, he was shocked to find that his basic flight skills professor was Butler Green. After all the effort he put into avoiding this guy, now he's stuck in his class. Frustrated, Han just sighs and throws his hands up as Juan steps in, saying he looks completely lost. Time flies by. And before you know it, the students are on trains headed for the camp. This camp is a classic event for the second-year students at Ardell Academy, where they leave the Ardell Empire with their seniors. The whole camp is about survival training. This year's camp is held in the Kesa Plains, which is a really green and relaxing place. Han can't help but sigh as they're dropped off in the mountains for the survival training. He totally feels like he's in a YouTube survival show as he hauls his luggage. He hears the announcement telling everyone to gather after getting off the bus. The teachers mention that this setup is meant to help students from different classes mix, but honestly, it rarely works. The second-year students have to tackle missions, while the seniors watch how they do. They can earn extra points for their grades, so there's no way to get out of participating in the program, but it also gives the seniors a chance to make life hard for the freshmen. A senior, Kasan, who's in his 3rd year, tells everyone to get on their feet and warns them to move fast if they don't want their grades to drop. He says the freshmen are totally unprepared and reminds them it's standard practice to prepare blankets and survival kits for the seniors. Adele is really confused and asks how they're supposed to survive without their food kits. Kasan loses his cool and yells at her to shut up, saying this is how things have always worked back in his day. He accuses her of being disrespectful to a senior, claiming that kind of attitude isn't okay. Kasan points to the students in front of him and orders them to hand over all their food and anything useful from their backpacks. The students look scared and quickly obey. Satisfied with their response, Kasan tells everyone to hurry up and warns them to keep acting that way or risk their grades dropping and even being sent home. Han just stands there doing nothing, feeling annoyed. Kasan notices him and asks if Han is refusing to follow orders and if he thinks the 3rd years are a joke. Han smirks and says yes, but adds that he doesn't exactly mean it that way. He just thinks the seniors' antics are kind of funny. Our boy understands that the 3rd year isn't a complete fool and has no valid reason to mess with the younger students. But this year's second years are something else, including all the main characters from the novel. Kasan probably feels frustrated dealing with these impressive newcomers. He can't help but mock Han, questioning how he has the nerve to act so haughty when he barely passed his first year. Kasan digs deeper and asks if Han's new attitude is because of who his family is and if his dad is being nice to him now after leaving him. Han is still amazed by how well his father treats him, so he doesn't like what Kasan is saying. Kasan is furious, but Han reminds him that the principal talked about how important teamwork is before the trip. He warns Kasan that his actions go against that and that the dean will probably call him in when they get back. Kasan, so angry, grabs Han's hands to restrain him, but just then, Han's pet dragon jumps out and bites Kasan's hand, making him scream. Han quickly pulls his angry pet away as it glares at Kasan. With his hand injured, Kasan is sent to the infirmary, and, upon leaving, he threatens to get revenge if he's left with a scar. Our boy keeps playing it cool, petting Basil's head and mocking Kasan in his mind. Some second-year students approach Han and ask if they should start packing. Han stands up and tells everyone to gather their things and head back to the tents. Meanwhile, in the third year's tent, Kasan is venting about Han, but a student warns him not to cross the line and suggests he help hand out supplies to the second years. Kasan isn't happy about our hero's potential success and spots the backpacks that Debbie is organizing. He asks if they belong to Han's group, and when he gets a nod, he grabs a backpack and starts a monologue about how Han needs to learn to respect his elders. Kasan begins to throw out the supplies, claiming that Han doesn't deserve food or water. Revi gets anxious and points out that 5 people can't survive on just 1 bottle of water, wondering if Kasan has lost his mind. Kasan retorts by asking if Revi is on the second year's side. Revi remains worried about the dwindling supplies, but Kasan brushes him off, saying that's just his opinion and that arrogant people need to experience hard times. After messing with Han's group's things, Kasan hopes they will have a hard time the next day. The next day arrives, and the students must survive for 6 days without any issues to pass. If anyone gets seriously injured or needs to return to base, it's game over. Han's group takes a break in the forest, and Juan mentions that the supply backpack feels pretty light. They only found 1 bottle of water, a rope, a photo, and an absorption stone when they checked. Han gets annoyed and wonders how they're going to survive for 6 days with so little. Then he laughs, realizing it's really all up to him. Ardell chimes in, saying that she always seems to run into trouble when she's around him, which feels a bit too coincidental. Han tells her to stop saying that and reminds her of all the good things she has learned from him. Natalia and Juan chime in to lift the group's spirits and encourage them to do their best. The group keeps moving forward and reaches a fork in the road. Han suggests taking the path on the left, but Juan raises an eyebrow and warns everyone to be careful since they aren't familiar with the area. Han insists that he has everything under control, but he doesn't mention that Professor Ernest called him earlier to fill him in on a few things. He also casually mentions that he has read a book about the area because he found it interesting. Natalia gets excited about what he said, and Juan gives him props for always knowing random facts. At first, Han thinks everything is on track, but by sunset, one person starts to feel dizzy, saying it feels like they're walking in circles. Someone else points out that the grass and trees all look the same. Han starts to worry, questioning his decision to go left. Back at the tent, a guy named Revi is worried. He asks Kasan if he took the monitoring stone from Han's group's backpack. When Revi sees the stone in Kasan's hand, he breaks into a sweat and tries to say it wasn't intentional. Now, because he knows he caught her taking their food, she starts to panic and says she doesn't want the group to get lost. Revi says the monitoring stone is very important because it's the main way students stay safe at camp. Without it, they won't be able to call for help if something goes wrong. He wants to know what they are going to do about it. Kason gets annoyed and asks Revi what he expects her to do. She's trembling at the thought that her group isn't strong enough to find their way back. She won't risk going back and facing the shame of failure. So she decides to wait for 3 days and tells Davy to calm down during that time. She hopes that the group will sort things out on their own to avoid trouble for both of them. The best outcome would be for everyone to get out safely and without any drama. The next night, Han gets a notification for the 5th main episode, The Secret of Survival. His mission is to uncover the secrets of the camp within a week. He sighs, but he feels excited, because a main episode usually means something big is coming, although he can't shake off the worry, since his friends haven't eaten well since the mission started. they've been walking all day and are exhausted. To make matters worse, they realize they've been walking in circles due to an illusion magic that is altering the terrain. Our boy starts to think that the magical illusions aren't just a natural trick like a mirage. He can't shake the feeling that the academy wouldn't put its students through this kind of torture on a camping trip. Frustrated, he wonders what enemies could be behind all this. While the others are having fun around campfires with all their gear, his group is just trying to survive. While he's lost in thought, he sees Juan pointing towards a cave. Ardell notices and asks if they've finally broken the illusion. Juan feels hopeful, thinking that maybe they can find a place to hide and make a fire to stay dry from the rain. But suddenly, they hear a noise out of nowhere and a huge boar with bright red eyes comes out of the cave. At that moment, they all realize that the beast already claims that cave. The boar is standing at the cave entrance, glaring at them furiously and snorting as it stomps the ground, clearly telling them to back off. Han notices the boar's anger and opens his backpack to take out Basil, jokingly calling him a big pig. He asks them if they can defeat it. He tells Basil to go for it, and the little dragon charges towards the boar. Basil is young, but he's a legendary dragon that can take on most mages. So Han feels confident they won't have any trouble with a boar. Suddenly, the boar throws Basil back, sending him flying. Han's proud expression vanishes and he's left wondering what happened. He runs to Basil, encouraging him to get up. Basil looks a bit dazed and has a bruise on his forehead. Han encourages him to get up again. Ardell watches them silently before shifting her attention to the boar. She draws her sword. Thinking that Basil might not be able to handle this fight, Ardell jumps to face the boar from above. Her sword gleams in the moonlight as she aims for the beast's heart. She goes for the strike, but the blade bounces off its tough hide. Realizing something isn't right, she backs away and figures out the beast must be magically enhanced. Juan gets scared and asks how a creature like that could possibly exist in the forest. Han is also confused. And with no other options, he turns to Basil and asks if he's feeling better, nudging the dragon to try again. Basil looks doubtful, wondering why they should try again after their previous failure. Han thinks they need to change their strategy and suggests a technique they've been practicing recently. Basil perks up at the name of the new technique. His breath is normally used for wide area attacks, but they've been training to focus it on a single point. Concentrated hits are much more powerful. Han didn't expect to put this to the test so soon, but he thought they should give it a shot anyway. He tells Basil to show them what they've been practicing. The little dragon concentrates and channels his new attack. Once he's ready, he unleashes flames mixed with lightning at the boar. The fire spark attack completely engulfs the giant pig, reducing it to ash. When the powerful attack fades, the boar falls to the ground, completely roasted. Natalia and Juan stare at the boar and wonder if a baby monster could really hit that hard. Natalia gives Basil a thumbs up and says he's not just any baby dragon, which makes the little dragon grin widely. At the same time, Han asks the group if they can smell that. He starts drooling and gets excited about having roast pork for dinner that night. Despite being the one who orchestrated the hunt, he takes on the task of skinning the boar to prepare the meat for the group. He knows he's the only one in the group who studied anatomy and grumbles as he carves the pork, feeling somewhat disheartened. He can't help but think about how his studies led him to the situation of skinning a pig. Later, he heads to the campfire and asks if the food is ready. Natalia chimes in, saying it was Basil who started the fire. The group places the pork skewers over the flames as the meat begins to sizzle. Han grabs a skewer and eagerly asks if they can start eating. Everyone enthusiastically agrees. Juan takes the first bite, getting emotional and saying he thought they were trapped, but now it feels like they're actually surviving. Han realizes they've been out all day without decent food or water and can only imagine how exhausted Juan must be. After taking a bite, Han tells everyone to settle down and offers to go scout around while the others set up their sleeping bags by the fire. Later in the cave, Han starts thinking about their next moves. He believes the academy won't realize they're missing for a while, maybe a week before anyone starts looking for them. He's worried about running into more illusion traps or magic beasts like the boar they dealt with. Feeling a bit lost, he lets out a sigh. Ardell approaches him and asks what he's thinking about. He wonders why she followed him, and she replies that she couldn't sleep while he was so deep in thought. Ardell points to the sky and suggests they look There's a spot in the cave where they can see the stars, and shooting stars are falling all around. She mentions that the stars remind her of something and asks if he knows that magic reflects who a person is on the inside. As an earth mage and a peasant, she wonders if she's more connected to the land than the sky. Then she asks Han why he decided to be a tamer, especially since it's not a very popular profession. Han knows the real reason is that he was a veterinarian in his past life and ended up in this novel, but he can't say that. So he throws out a silly excuse about wanting to relax and let others take control. Ardell teases him about why he always makes Basil do things for him. After the joke, she gives him a meaningful look. While Han thinks about how magic seems to find those who desire it, that's just how the world works. This makes him wonder why Ardell has such a strong ability, almost as powerful as the main character of their story. Ardell tells Han her story and how she became a mage. She tells him that when she was a child, the earth swallowed her entire village. Just like that, in one fell swoop, people started speculating about a hidden dark mage or some curse, but honestly, she didn't care about that. What really affected her was that all those innocent villagers disappeared in a single day and she was left all alone. Han finally feels like everything is falling into place. He understands why Ardell never talked about her family in the original story, because she has no place to go during breaks, because she trains alone, and because she feels she has no other choice. But he also realizes that she's too impatient to achieve her goals. Just as he's about to step in and offer his help, he hears a strange cracking sound. Looking down, he notices a crack spreading beneath him. The cracks expand rapidly and practically cover the entire cave floor. Suddenly, the floor gives way and they both fall. Han gets up, still a bit dizzy. Ardell is already on her feet and starts talking about those strange lights they saw before passing out. Han recognizes them and remembers the strange note that Leon found in the secret passage. He asks Ardell if she remembers that, pointing out that the lights look like the ruins from that place. Ardell is a little startled as she recalls how Leon found her while she was looking for clues about the dark mages at the school. They both quickly realize what's happening as they look around at one of the cubes trapped in the chest of a stone golem. Han reaches for the cube, but the golem trembles and he worries it might wake up. Ardell hopes it stays still, but the golem starts to move. Han complains about his bad luck with the boar and the golem, telling Ardell they can't win and asking her what they should do. Ardell tells him to stop overthinking it and grab her hand, which makes him blush. When he hesitates, she takes his hand and says they're going to escape. Suddenly, the ground rises and launches them back into the cave, but they hit their heads on the ceiling before landing. Finally safe, our boy mutters about their difficult escape and asks why they hit the ceiling if there was an opening nearby. Ardell looks annoyed and reminds him that she was the one who saved him. As the golem approaches the cave, Ardell thinks of the worst-case scenario, a golem that has been dormant for centuries, crushing everything after being awakened, and the cave is about to collapse. They start running as Han says her story sounds pretty believable. They run into Juan and Natalia by the campfire. Juan asks why the ground is shaking, and our boy tells him there's no time for explanations, as everyone needs to run. But then Ardell, he stops everyone and reminds them that they're still trapped in that illusory magic. Han looks worried and asks what they should do. Ardell suggests facing it head-on and reassures them, saying the golem should be slower than they think. As the golem approaches them, Ardell launches a stone barrage and hurls rocks at it. The rocks hit but cause no damage. This leaves everyone frustrated about what to do next. Han suddenly thanks her, surprising Ardell, since she feels like she hasn't done anything. He explains that her words gave him an idea. If her magic doesn't work, then Basil's fire skills won't either, since a magic-powered golem would resist any blow, even a firestorm. Han asks Natalia for support, but she hesitates, saying her attacks aren't as strong as Ardell's, but Han insists it doesn't matter. He asks her to attack the golem with some water magic. Ardell chimes in, arguing that stone creatures usually resist water, but Han assures her it will work and asks her to trust him. Although she's a bit unsure, Natalia follows Han's plan. She casts Aqua Blast and soaks the golem as if it were getting a refreshing shower. She feels like it didn't do much. But our hero thanks her and brings out his new companion, Peta, the little dragon who chirps and flaps its wings with its golden eyes shining with confidence. Ardell covers her face and wonders about the sudden glow. Then a cold wave spreads out and freezes the soaked golem, leaving it completely solid. Han shares his new plan to freeze what can be broken and then shatter it. He manages to freeze the golem, which cracks and shatters. He explains how frozen water expands and can break even the hardest rocks. Just as he feels relieved that his plan worked, he suddenly collapses. The rest of the group rushes to him, and he assures them he's fine, just a bit exhausted from overusing his magic. Ardell then warns them about approaching footsteps. A moment later, Kasan and Dan arrive and stare at the shattered golem. Everyone feels a sense of relief, but Han looks at them and asks if anyone has something to say. Kasan trembles, clasps his hands together, and apologizes, admitting his mistake and acknowledging that he didn't think things would get so out of hand. He insists he didn't take the stone on purpose and has been worried about everything. Han looks at him, trying to decide if he should punish him. After a long sigh, he gives Kasan a fierce look and tells him he'll let it slide this time. Then he suggests that maybe kneeling might help lighten the mood a bit. Kasan is surprised and asks our boy what's going on, but he tells him to hurry up and kneel. Kasan reluctantly kneels and gives a half-hearted apology, admitting that he messed up. Meanwhile, the Academy sends out an emergency evacuation order. With only 1 week left, the magic used to defeat the golem attracts the attention of everyone in the forest. Fortunately, everyone is safe, although the senior student might face consequences. Han considers investigating the sudden appearance of the wild boar and the golem, but he's not sure how deep he should dig into the matter. He takes out the cube and shows it to Lee, who already knows about it and nods at our boy for his effort, according to the original story. The third cube shouldn't be where it is right now, actually. It should be with the dark mages. Han remembers how it once belonged to them and was kept secret. In the forest, suddenly, the illusion magic, the wild boar, and the golem make sense. Lee notices a strange energy in the forest and asks about the illusion magic. Ardell agrees, sensing that something is off. Lee comments that such magic can't be cast from far away. Ardell realizes that whoever cast the spell must have been somewhere in the forest. This makes our boy nervous, because the dark mages are getting closer, and at this rate, the cubes and their lives are in serious danger. Suddenly, our hero remembers the moment from the 6th main episode related to Ardell's death squad. He was supposed to keep the cubes safe from the dark mages. He thinks that Lee was probably the one who originally organized this group. The problem with this episode is that the cubes are inevitably stolen by Erend, a mid-boss type character. Erend is an expert in detection, theft, and pickpocketing. Being a master pickpocket means that no matter how many cubes they guard, he can quickly snatch them. With this new cube added to the mix, they have many more than they bargained for. It's only a matter of time before Erend makes his move. Han thinks it's time to wrap things up and Lee agrees, mentioning that Han probably needs some time off. Checking the quest status screen, he realizes he needs to bring 5 more people. He definitely wants to take Lee, Ardell, and Solia. Then he thinks of Natalia, who was the brains of the group before, and Juan, who is always on Lee's side. But for some reason, June comes to mind first. In the original story, June doesn't find out about the cubes until at least 2 years later. But after spending time with her in dungeons and tournaments, he discovers that she's brilliant, always at the top of her class in theology. And the professors keep her under observation. He considers Seymour, who has a bad attitude and an unclear role in the group. Ever since our boy helped him escape from prison and revived the Dark Magic Club, he hasn't caused any trouble and is just waiting for Han's signal. Seymour had a lot of potential originally, but our hero can't risk a betrayal right now. He feels uneasy about assembling a team that deviates from the original story, but he knows he must prepare for a different outcome to survive. Han intends to identify people's abilities early on, get them involved in the main story, and help them grow, which could lead to a different outcome than the original. He's determined to trust his intuition and organize the team. He also decides to conduct an experiment and heads to the Rocky Mountains. He entrusts the management of the cube to Lee, who impresses him by setting up strong traps and barriers in isolated areas. Han finally finds the cube safely stored in the cave. After going through many struggles and moments of danger, he finds 3 of them. In the original story, the dark mages had 5 cubes to absorb magical energy. He knows this because he has read the book. These cubes grant power, but they also take something. In the original story, Lee gives up his sight to use the cubes in the final showdown, but our hero doesn't plan to follow that path. Finds it interesting to explore other uses for the cubes, which are crucial to the story, since everyone wants them. They might be more important than just being magic power batteries, so our boy decides to try taming the cube. It sounds a little crazy. But he thinks, why not? Taming is all about communication, and he wants to talk to the cube. He tries talking to the cube, but gets nothing. After several attempts, our boy realizes it's not working, but his pride as a tamer keeps him going. He thinks about the fundamentals of training, showing interest and communicating, just like it says in the first chapter of the beginner's manual. He faces the cube again and demands a response, feeling like he's losing control, but nothing happens. He frustratingly remembers how things got better with Basil when he called him by his name, feeling that his action is a bit silly. He names the cube Square because it looks like one, then it dawns on him what he's doing. But suddenly a notification pops up saying the cube's affinity has increased. Our boy is surprised. Wondering if this is real. More notifications about the increasing affinity keep coming, and he's confused about why. This rock is responding to him. A notification on the screen asks if he wants to tame Square. He's completely stunned and quickly says yes. Then another message informs him that Square has no thoughts and is just an inanimate object with 100 magic points, plus a special transfer ability. Our boy can't believe Square has 100 magic points, which is way more than Basil's 70. He realizes why sorcerers are so obsessed with the cubes. But while he's absorbed in that crazy number, he forgets something important. He's so impressed that he managed to tame a cube that from that moment on, the secret cube taming project begins. And the first cube, named Square, is under control. In no time, but things get much more complicated when he tries to tame the second cube. The second cube's affinity increases very slowly, which is frustrating, but he knows he can't complain with Basil. Krusty and Square backing him up, he's already leveled up more than the average tamer if he gives up now. Many tamers will be ready to throw stones at him, so he decides to take it easy. For now, the second cube is the Void Cube, and once he starts taming it, he discovers that each cube has a special ability. This one can create space by consuming magic, which is way cooler than just being a magic amplifier. Taming Square first was definitely the right call. He thinks he'll keep the cube close to increase its affinity. With all the chaos from the followers faction and the risk of things being stolen, having at least one cube with him seems safer. His attention shifts to Basil, who has unlocked a polymorphism that allows him to change shape. But Basil can only change his color instead of turning into something cool. It makes Han wonder if his ability is really all that impressive. Then Basil shows he can only slightly tighten his jawline. Han is left scratching his head, wondering how this can be considered polymorphism. When a dragon can only change color, he realizes Basil can only make minor changes. He wonders if polymorphism actually covers other things too, since he's going to be carrying the cube around. It would be annoying if it stands out too much. So he asks Basil to give it a try. Basil is completely shocked when he sees it, but he quickly turns it into a round ball, and that's how the second cube ended up being called round. From that moment on, convincing everyone to join the Vanguard becomes complicated. And June is the hardest person to persuade. Han thought it would be easy, since she's a good person and has a solid connection with Lee, but then she starts rambling about strange prophecies and how she doesn't want to stay near him, which makes the whole thing a pain. In the end, she decides to join anyway. As for Seymour, he agrees as expected, and it seems he's looking to redeem himself with the help of the Vanguard. With that, Han finishes the 6th main episode without any major setbacks. As time passes, autumn arrives. One day, our boy is chilling with a book when Natalia approaches him, curious to know what he's doing. She has an adorable kitten in her arms. After Han explains that he's reading a book from the library, he's totally surprised to see the little fur ball. Natalia tells him she found the kitten shivering in the rain near her house and couldn't just leave it there because it reminded her of Basil. Han, confused about how a kitten could remind her of Basil, since they aren't even the same type of animal, starts thinking that maybe the idea of having pets doesn't make much sense, since cats and dragons seem to be grouped together in their world. Natalia is surprised to see the kitten snuggling up to Han, especially since it took her days to get the little guy to come near her. Noticing the book on his lap, Natalia asks if she's interrupting and what he's reading. He replies that it's just something for fun, not school stuff. He picked it up to learn more about artifacts, since he's going to be working with cubes. Natalia asks if he's interested in that kind of thing, commenting that it seems pretty complicated. Han agrees that it's kind of hard to understand. She offers to help him and points to a section on broom classification, explaining how to make brooms for daily use or for competitions. Our boy is impressed with her knowledge. Natalia smiles at the compliment, mentioning that her dad helped her make a broom. Our hero can't believe how close he is to an expert. Natalia mentions that the stuff in the earlier sections isn't that hard to make, since they're just basic artifacts. She points out items like a dagger with a cool effect and an expensive potion. When she turns to the next page, Han gets nervous. That page has the description of a cube, but it doesn't have a name. He can't help but think that even though Natalia knows a lot about artifacts, she probably doesn't know anything about cubes. Natalia mentions the cubes in the book, and Han is surprised that she knows about them. He instantly regrets asking, as he realizes not many students are familiar with them. She tells him she knows about the cubes and wants to know how he knows about them, since they're rare. Han throws the question back at her, asking how she knows about the cubes. That's when Natalia drops the bombshell. Her grandfather was the one who originally made the cubes. Han is totally shocked. When Natalia mentions that her grandfather created the cube after sharing what she knows, she asks him how he learned about the cubes. Han is torn about whether to tell the truth. He remembers that Natalia generally has good intentions and tends to help the protagonist. Even if she's not directly involved in the main plot, this makes him think she probably won't misuse the cube. But he realizes he can't stay quiet and needs more information about it, so he decides to be honest. He tells Natalia that he actually has a cube. Her reaction is pure surprise. She explains that her grandfather warned her that the cubes were stolen and are being used somewhere, and told her to keep it a secret. She's curious about how Han ended up with one of them. Han realizes it's not a good idea to keep the cube a secret from Natalia. He thinks it's better to tell her, even if it means bending the rules a bit about how many players there should be. He asks Natalia if she can share what she knows, telling her that the dark mages are trying to get the cube. She is totally willing to help. Natalia tells him a bunch of details about the cube. She tells him it was originally made to generate energy, and that her grandfather had the brilliant idea of building a magic-powered train to replace the old steam engines. Han thinks that the crazy advancements in science and technology in this place come from the limits of magic and what it can't do. Magic-powered trains are one of those things that magic just can't achieve. Natalia talks about how moving a heavy train requires a ton of magic, which makes it nearly impossible. That's when her grandfather came up with this cool artifact with infinite magic packed into a small core. Her family, the Huayu, has been making artifacts for generations. Her grandfather even traveled all over the continent to find the power source he had in mind. Eventually, he found a mineral that met all the requirements. He crushed these luminous stones with condensed magic to create a single cube. When he combined these stones, they showed some pretty unique abilities. Han thinks that each cube has its own special powers. When Natalia asks him how he knows that, he can't reveal that he has tamed the cube, so he plays it off as a guess. Natalia mentions that the cubes should be controlled with some added rules and powers, but she's not completely in the loop, since she didn't make them herself. She points out that there's always a cost when rituals are placed on any artifact. Even the smallest artifacts have limits and demand a high price from their user. Han remembers the cube of souls that can bring people back to life, but at the cost of the user's life. It occurs to him that the cubes were initially made to be power sources, but that has changed. Sometimes inventions take unexpected paths, like Nobel's dynamite, which was thought to be a safe explosive, but ended up being a weapon of mass destruction. The same thing has happened with the cubes, twisted by the greed of mages. Han feels lucky to have learned so much about the cube. He thinks about how different things could have been if Natalia hadn't talked to him on that bench. or if Yuna hadn't found that book about artifacts. He would have been clueless. As Han walks down the academy hallway, June suddenly calls out to him when she sees the kitten in his arms. She jokes about whether it's a tiger or some other creature that he's managed to tame. Our hero laughs and explains that it's just a regular cat. He tells her that Natalia found the kitten abandoned in the rain and has been taking care of it, but it seems to have taken a liking to him, so Natalia asked him to look after it for a day. John mentions how busy Natalia has been with her duties. Our hero adds that even though he's a dominator, it doesn't mean he's an expert with animals, although he does a pretty good job. When John asks if he can hold the kitten, our boy jokes that her loud personality might win the cat over, just like she has tamed him. Once the kitten is in June's arms, it quickly settles down and warms up to her. She laughs and asks if Han has managed to tame it completely. He gets embarrassed and asks her to stop with the jokes. With a laugh, the kitten seems to really like June and she feels the same way about it. She asks him if she can take care of it, especially if it doesn't have an owner. Our boy thinks it's a good idea, since he's always involved in dangerous things. June is a diviner and has a much safer job. Besides, he mentions that Natalia was looking for someone to take care of the kitten. June gets super excited and hugs the kitten, saying that they're a family now. Han tells her that Natalia has already given it a name, Joy. John finds it adorable and playfully lifts Joy up, promising to take good care of him. Han can't help but smile at this cute pair of a diviner and a kitten. Suddenly, Han remembers that June had been looking for him. June then explains why she was looking for him. She tells him she has some special news and asks if he remembers her brother, Sook, from the astrology competition. She reveals that Sook is about to be assigned as a researcher for Ardell. After Han returns to his room, Adele tells him that Sook is now the new professor of magical fabrication studies. She adds that he will be teaching, working with the magic department, and doing his research work. Feeling exhausted, Han asks how she knows so much about that. Adele explains that she has a part-time job as a research assistant, which surprises Han since he doesn't realize how busy she is. Then, he thinks for a moment and asks her why she had never mentioned her part-time job with Sook. Adele thinks he should already know and wonders if she has to explain everything to him. Han is a bit speechless, admitting that she's right, that she doesn't have to explain everything to him, but he still feels a little out of the loop. He then asks her if Seok has been busy with any cases. Adele says yes, mentioning that Sook has been investigating an unsolved case. She can't see the reports because students aren't allowed to access them, but she knows he's been working on it for quite some time. Suddenly, Han hears a system notification. He sees that he has been assigned a new sub-episode to help Sook solve the mystery behind the Kaiten case. In his office, Sook is reviewing the reports on this case, which has baffled everyone for years. An entire town mysteriously disappeared a decade ago. For Sook, the main prophet of the Ardell Empire has a tough case on his hands. He has prophetic magic that usually helps him see the future, making it easier for him to find clues and solve cases much faster than anyone else. That's why he has a solid reputation and recognition from the Magic Bureau and the Empire. Still, despite all his abilities, the mystery of Katome remains unsolved. The case is still a mystery because the Magic Bureau is trying to keep it a secret. Seok usually avoids anything that might bother them, but he can't let this go. When he was a child, he saw a prophecy linking the Katome case to things that could happen now. Now that he's a professor at the Ardell Academy, he's determined to investigate it. He's committed to finding out what really happened in Katome 10 years ago, no matter what it costs. But he can't shake the feeling that uncovering the truth might change him or turn everything he knows upside down. Han is thinking about this subplot. He realizes that although the main plot focuses on the dark magic situation at Ardell Academy, with all its risks and surprises, this subplot introduces the Katome case out of nowhere. He remembers that Katome is probably where the Amendra girl from the cave comes from. Adele used to hate dark mages because of the Katome incident and killed her directly when she became a victim of dark magic. This raises serious questions about why she died in the first place. Although investigating this seems like a headache, Han is curious. He thinks that maybe he can pass the useful information on to Adele. Still, he sees no reason to get involved with Sook beyond his classes. Suddenly, Han hears someone say that researcher Sook is looking for him. A woman tells him to head to Sook's office. And Han can't help but wonder why Sook never seems to let him catch a break. Once in Seok's office, Seok breaks the news and tells him that he will be attending the royal banquet. Han is completely shocked by this and asks Seok to explain. Seok clarifies it by saying that going to the banquet is part of his investigation. Han looks over the report on the Tamed case, and Seok explains that he wants Han to gather data at the banquet. Since Seok is well known and can't start asking uncomfortable questions about a case from a decade ago, he thinks that Han is the perfect person for the job. After all, he can blend in without drawing attention, and he's also Seok's younger brother. Han sees this as a win for himself and decides to accept the side quest. He asks Seok if there will be dancing or a party at the banquet, and Seok tells him it's an imperial event hosted by the emperor. Seok also warns him not to draw too much attention or cause trouble, especially grabbing adults by the collar if he gets angry. Han thinks it over and figures the warning makes sense. A few days later, Han and Seok arrive at the royal banquet in the afternoon. Looking around, Han feels like he's trapped in a fantasy world. At the banquet, our boy sees the chocolate fountain. He thinks everything should be as flashy as you'd expect from an event hosted by an emperor. He believes that being at gatherings like this is key to meeting people. After spending so much time in a hospital or buried in books, this feels like a whole new world to him. While he's lost in thought, someone calls his name. It's Professor Miller, who mentions that it's not every day a common student gets to attend places like this and asks him why he's there. Our hero explains that he's helping Sook with an investigation. When Miller asks him what it's about, Han mentions the Tamed case, checking to see if the professor knows anything about it. Unfortunately, Miller doesn't have any information, thinking about digging deeper for answers. Han realizes the professor is uninformed, then Miller asks if he and Sek are close. Han finds this weird, but he replies that he's not sure, although he respects Shook and believes he's someone worth following. The professor sees that Han is very talented, but warns him to be careful, pointing out that mages can have dark sides and suggesting he shouldn't trust them too much. Miller chimes in, saying it's just the ramblings of an old man and that he should take them with a grain of salt. Han thanks him for the heads up, promising to keep it in mind. The professor leaves. Hoping Han enjoys the banquet, Han wonders why the professor mentions Seok out of the blue. He assumes that even someone like Miller, who is respected and well-connected, knows nothing about it. In that case, he starts to wonder who else he could contact. Scanning the room, he sizes people up based on their appearance, since he doesn't know anyone there. He looks for someone who seems important and has a good vibe, but isn't too intimidating. Just then, someone places a hand on his shoulder from behind. A young woman chimes in, saying that a place like this isn't much fun when you're alone. She notices Han looks lost and asks why he's there by himself. Han realizes she seems important and isn't giving off any bad vibes. He's surprised when she calls him by his name and wonders how she knows who he is.